All right. Welcome to the BigMx Radio podcast, brought to you by Fox Racing Canada. Go to the website, download the whole catalog, and then go to your local dealer, get fitted from head to toe. You'll be looking good and be safe out there on the track, or looking good in the pits as well with Fox Racing Canada. Also with us is Guts Racing. Andy Gregg over at Guts Racing. Fantastic guy. You need yourself a Gregg's Ultra Trick seats. They make the best stuff, whether it's seat bases, lightweight seat foams, or those gripper seat covers that just allow you to stick to the motorcycle. You have a little bit more connectivity to that bike so that you can manipulate around the track and drop those lap times. I am your host, Brad Gebhart. With us on the line, we got two very special guests. I'll start off with the champ, a East Coast regional Supercross champ. He's been on the BigMx Radio podcast before, twice. Now he's on for not only a podcast, but YouTube as well. Denny Stephenson. Denny, how's it going?
Very good, Brad. Appreciate you having us. Me and Checkers, longtime friends, and looking forward to doing a little preseason review on the 23 Supercross. So
absolutely. I am so excited to break this wide open. And yeah, you're totally right. We have Chris Riesenberg, otherwise known as Checkers, here on the BigMx Radio podcast. He came without a trace. He came here tonight to get on your case. He's the crush grooving, the body moving, and the record breaking. Checkers, how's it going?
Oh, I'm so excited. Thanks for inviting me to be on here. And I literally argue with Denny about this stuff every single day, all day. It's one of my favorite things to do, other than actually riding my dirt bike and hanging out with my fiance. Probably that's my next favorite thing to do, is argue with Denny and prove him wrong. So to be able to do it for everybody who can see it is going to be amazing. For
sure. And I feel like I'm sort of like the master puppeteer among all of this, because having the two of you guys on, like, no one's going to remember what I have to say about this series. It's going to be all about you two going tooth and nail, like really getting into some of the analysis and arguments that are going to follow. Guys, we have a 2023 season that, I guess we say it every year, it could be the best one yet, but this season has the potential to have some real fireworks. You have some young up and comers coming into the series that are already established, like Christian Craig. You have the old guard, which is like Eli Tomac, he seems like stronger than ever. And then you've got guys like Chase Sexton, who established themselves last year. He got his first win, led a ton of laps, but also showed that he could be a little bit inconsistent on top of that. Guys, right off the hop, I think we need to talk about Team Honda. Let's talk about Chase Sexton. Last year, 6th in points. He got one win. His average finish last year, 5.6. His average start, 3.9. Checkers, I'll let you take the floor right off the hop with Chase Sexton. What are your thoughts on this guy who is really establishing himself as a contender every single year?
Well, I think the key with Chase Sexton is it's year 3, and people talk about it all the time. People catch their groove at year 3, it seems like. And Chase is, throughout his career, has gotten better and better every single year. If you go back to when he turned pro as a rookie and started to improve, and then he won that first Supercross title really because Austin Forkner had problems. And then the second year, he dominated that 250 Supercross series, and he's continued to improve year after year. I think it's surprising, though, on paper that he only won one race last year, because I think if you ask people without them really thinking about it, they'll say, oh, he won a couple or a few races or something along those lines.
He should have had Minnesota.
Yeah, he definitely should have had Minnesota. But mistakes like that have cost him, and he's hit the deck, and you can't do that if you want to win a championship. He had 8 podiums last year. Out of 17 races, and only had 8 podiums. That is not going to get it done for a championship. Do I think he's going to make a step up? I absolutely do. But you also got to remember, like Ferrandis came in last year. Oh, he came off the outdoor title. He's going to kill it. The outdoor stuff doesn't necessarily transfer to Supercross, except for the maturity that Chase Sexton showed. That can transfer over potentially. And he does have the speed. It's just a wait and see of, can he avoid those bad races, avoid those big crashes? If he wants to be a title contender, I have no doubt that he's going to win races.
What are your thoughts, Denny? Does Chase Sexton take a step forward? Do you think that he's going to continue to make some of these mistakes? Like, obviously, he gels well with the bike outdoors. Last year, it seemed like with Supercross, it would either be flashes of brilliance or he'd be on the deck.
Well, I can honestly say that he can't survive another season like he did last year. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a rider hit the deck as hard as he did in the one practice where he did step on, step off, hit neutral, and just dove through the bars. Crashes like that, you're lucky to walk away, let alone not sustain an injury. So for Chase to find some success, he's definitely got to stay off the ground and just simple crashes like in practice like that, because the body's not going to sustain it. The bike's not going to sustain it. And it's going to beat you up confidence-wise. But like Checker said, he only had eight podiums out of 17 rounds last year. He had 12 top fives, which is pretty solid. He had 16th in Minnesota when he folded the front wheel. That's another thing. He tends to push that front end like a broom. You know, I don't know why he trusts that thing so much. It's a lot like Davalos does, or has done in the past, a lot like RJ Hampshire does. He needs to stay off that front end and let it just kind of roll a little bit more instead of trying to push it so hard. Got 16th in Minnesota. They had the DNF, 22nd Detroit. He missed Seattle. So I think he can do it. I think he's got the full capability. He's learned a lot. I think that does a little bit of confidence comes through from outdoors last year, winning the nations. The pressure's on him. You know, he's no longer the second guy. He's the number one guy on the 450, at least till Jet, maybe in the outdoors. But I personally think Chase is going to be one of the top three guys, and he's going to get more wins. I'm thinking around 5 wins, and I think I got him probably around second in the series. So I'm expecting big things for Chase in his third year, as Checker said.
I think you just hit a lot of great points there. And like for me, Chase Sexton has proven himself as a contender in this class. I think there's a lot of confidence that could be gained by racing an entire outdoor series, basically like a table set for 2 with him and Eli Tomac. And the fact that he's really established himself as someone who belongs in the 450 class, not totally unlike a guy like Ricky Carmichael, not comparing him to Ricky Carmichael in any way as far as like what he'll do in the sport, but Ricky's first year on a 252 stroke, horrible season, number 9 on a Kawasaki, always on the ground. Second year, he gets that 1 win at Daytona, and then look out, the 2001 series came by. And I'm not saying he's about to rip off 13 wins, but it puts him in a much better like mental position to say, yes, I belong with these guys. I can race with these guys and I can move forward. And Denny, the one thing you did forget about mentioning when you were talking about his 2022 season is that he was in the lead at Anaheim 1 before he folded the front end there and gave the win to Kenny. So honestly, he easily could have probably had 3 or 4 wins last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's just got to get over the hump, you know, as he did in the outdoors this last year. You know, it was forging steel on steel with those two in the outdoor season, Eli and Chase. And I think that kind of having to ride a perfect race. I mean, Checker and I sat next to each other at Millville and watched that second moto. And the way they just pushed each other, they were running, you know, 110%, you know, for 30 plus 2 laps. I think that can carry over into knowing how to not push the bike or push yourself too far. And I think that'll transfer in the outdoors or into the Supercross season a little bit more than I think it did for Dylan. And plus he starts up front. You know, the question we've had with Ferrandis, guy can't get starts. Chase likes to get up front early. And I think if the starts are good, continue to be good. Like, again, I think we can see about 5 wins out of Chase come 2023.
Fair enough. Last thing I'll say about Chase Sexton, and Checkers, I'll let you chime in on this, is last year it was well known that he, in Supercross, both he and Kenny battled setup as far as really feeling confident on their bike, whether they're able to, like Denny said, be confident in that front wheel. If things roll off, say the first 4 or 5 races, and like he's not getting along with the bike, things are not going his way, like how devastating can that be to his overall championship if he doesn't really feel 100% confident in the motorcycle and just comfortable being able to go as fast as he can, knowing the fact that like there's a possibility in 2024 he changes colors?
Well, I think the big thing there is for him to realize if the motorcycle is not completely where it needs to be, to take a second or a third and not try to push it and put yourself on the ground chasing your bike, which I think he either figured the bike out or figured that out at the end of last year, because his last 5 or 6 races were very, very strong. They were all in the top 5, and most of them were podiums. So he really put the end of the season together well. I heard that he switched shocks and using the BFRC shock that he was using outdoors.
That's right.
For Supercross, which there's not a ton of data on that thing in Supercross. In fact, I remember all the way back to when Hanny had his team, and we worked with Matt Bisceglia, and we took the thing to Supercross, and this Showa engineers were at the Suzuki track, and they were blown away that we were running the thing in Supercross and actually making it work, because they had been told that you can't make the thing work in Supercross. Chase talked about it somewhere. I was watching an interview, and he said he's happy with it and it works in Supercross. And if that's the case, that's awesome. But he also doesn't have a ton of data on that. So, if he's in a spot where at Anaheim 1, he's having issues, they don't necessarily have a ton of data from, okay, last year we did this to fix the problem in Supercross. So that will be super interesting. But I think here's the thing: you can ride through that and get a third or fourth place finish. It's okay. It doesn't ruin your season. But if he tries to ride through it and puts himself on the ground, that's how you lose your championship.
Certainly. And then on top of that, I think that one thing that Chase definitely has a feather in his cap is that he's a pretty good starter. What were you going to say there, Denny?
Oh, I was just going to say, he like Checkers brought to attention. He did finish top four in the last 5 rounds. Top 4 out of the last 7 rounds. He had that one DNF or didn't race Seattle. So he did finish Supercross season strong. And I think, again, he got the bike set up pretty similar to the way he wanted it and ended it on a good note. And I think mentally, the last time he rode Supercross, he finished top 5, top 4. And I think that confidence will roll into this coming season as well, in Anaheim as well, and get up front and maybe avoid those last towards the end of the race mistakes.
Go ahead, Checkers.
Yeah, and then, you mentioned that it's pretty well known that he's leaving Honda after the end of this season, or it's very strongly rumored. And the worst thing that can happen for Honda is for him to have a terrible year, move on over to KTM and do extremely well. The best thing that can happen and the best thing that can happen to Honda is he wins the championship for them and does extremely well, and then goes over there and struggles. So the team's going to be all in. Chase wants to do well. He's not going to, he's not just going to throw a year away. But if things are going poorly, it could definitely put some more stress on that relationship for sure. And maybe he does throw in the towel a little bit if it's not going well. But I don't see the Honda guys treating him any differently, and I see them working very hard to make sure he has all the tools that he can to go win races.
Fair enough. What about Chase's running mate? I'm talking about a smooth operator in Colt Nichols. I'm a huge fan of this signing. Colt is a great guy. Last time he was on Hondas was with the Crossland Honda team during his rookie season. I believe he did a knee injury that particular year, but did spend some time on Hondas after his amateur career, which he grew up on Kawasaki's in through the Team Green program. He looks good on the bike. He's a good rider. He's a fast rider. He's a former champion in the 250 class. Obviously last year was about as ugly as it could possibly be as far as him being off the bike. So I think that might be one thing that sort of hurts Colt in his ability to continue moving forward and really make this like a great rookie campaign. Kind of sounds like he's going to only have sort of like a 1 year to sort of prove himself on this machine, which does add pressure, but that might also bring out the best. And what are your thoughts, Checkers?
Well, the pressure's on, and normally I would say that that's a terrible thing, but I don't think there's a ton of expectation on him either. So it allows him to not necessarily have to feel the pressure. He's coming in as an underdog under the radar. The biggest thing with Colt Nichols, I don't think it's talent or speed or any of that. It's literally, can he stay healthy? And,
yep.
Honda slotted him in as they want to put the bike in the main event, and I'm guessing they want to put it in the top 10. For him, he needs to make a statement because he has a Supercross only deal. It's a great opportunity. He has great resources around him. I've seen it's been really, really quiet in the off season, which tells me that Honda has him working and focused, and he's doing his job. I expect him to come in and be very fit. I don't expect him to light the world on fire with speed, but I think he'll be in the mix speed wise. And I think we actually see some really good, consistent results out of Colt Nichols. And he might be a little bit invisible, which actually probably isn't the best thing for him. I think that in order for him to secure a ride moving forward, he has to show some blazing speed and some flashes of brilliance and run up front. And I don't necessarily see that happening. And I think if he tries to do that, he's going to end up on the ground and on the sidelines, which then what's Honda do? Then they're sitting without a rider under their truck. And so I'm sure they're pushing him not to do that. And it'll be interesting to see if he can hold back. He's already been getting hurt on the 250. he did seize his opportunity with Star and finally wrapped up and put a championship there. But I mean, that was a long time coming. Like I said, there's been a lot of injuries, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do. He's probably the one guy that I don't have a ton of inkling on. He can get 6th place, and it wouldn't surprise me. He could get 14th, 15th in the series, and it wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Devo? Honestly, like I could see Colt getting a lot of really quiet 8s.
Yeah, no, I agree with Checkers almost verbatim, but I think also that if anybody can come in under the radar, somebody who's been through so much hell, so much shit, so much adversity, it's Colt. I mean, he hasn't got, I mean, if you tracked his trajectory to when he won the championship, I mean, it's unlike any other rider really in the sport that's ever found success. He's raced arena cross. He's rode for privateer teams. He's had multiple different weird, strange opportunities, and he's always made the best of them. Despite getting injured, he's kept his head on his shoulders, kept positive. I know he works a lot down in Oklahoma with Renard and stuff in the past. So now he's got this opportunity with Honda. I think, again, like Checker said, he could run 6th. I wouldn't be, and he needs to get himself up front, get a whole shot one of these main events, and just run her, see how long he can go. And I think that would give us a better idea of him just kind of, like Checkers again said, running invisible, running that mid-pack, making those last main event, last lap passes that get you into the top 10 if guys crash or something like that. He has to show some blazing speed, win a heat race, maybe something like that, to really kind of put himself on the map for a 2024 factory ride. Because I think it's a great opportunity, but if it doesn't really work out, it could go the opposite way for Colt, and it could go poorly to where he won't even be on the radar. So I'm rooting for him. Again, as somebody who's gone through so much adversity like he has with injuries and self-doubt, I know that comes with injuries. So I'm pumped for him. I look for him to do well, and I wish the best for him.
Certainly. And Colt is that guy who has a next level skill set, that he's shown speed and the ability to come back and get up to speed every single time he comes back, not totally unlike his fellow Oklahoman in Trey Kennard. And one of the things that, and honestly, he probably gets along great with Trey. The fact that they both work for Honda now. The one thing also that Colt has, like sort of the feather in his cap, is the fact that guy has an innate ability to pull the hottest women in the sport of motocross. Like his roster is absolutely unbelievable. Like he's like,
let's be honest, if his racing career doesn't work out, his modeling career would work out
100%.
So.
Absolutely. He'll still be in the catalog.
Yeah, exactly. You can still go to GQ and do some underwear ads.
Fair enough.
You guys think if he comes through with a solid season, is there a chance for him to stay at Honda? I mean, we know that Chase is on his way out and Jet's taking that spot. And I mean, I think there's a chance for him to stay at Honda if he just puts in a solid season and kind of plays the game that they want him to play. And he could be the number 2 guy right beside Jet. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that.
Yeah, I kind of see him as like an Ivan Tedesco light, being able to like win some heat races, ride up front. If he gets good starts, he could be a great 5 through 8 guy who shows some flash and is consistent. And honestly, there's value in that. Like for a team, especially like Honda, who they're always going to have their sort of like quote unquote front runner. They've been known to sort of like keep a guy along in that spot who can just put in consistent rides. And if he's able to do that, I think that sets him up for a lot of success.
Absolutely. There's no, we've talked on our text thread, Check and I and his brother and everybody. There's no shame in being the B guy on the team. I mean, there's only so many guys you're going to hire that can win championships. So many guys you can hire that can win races, but you still want guys that are going to be out front, represent the brand well. And I think Colt will do that. And I forgot his relationship with Trey. Trey being the number 1 guy there at testing, their longtime relationship. I think if anyone can get the best out of Colt, it could be Trey. Yeah, that was a great point. I didn't consider that. So again, I think the more we talk, I've gotten even higher on him already just from this conversation. So good things for him.
Well, that's what we do here is we change people's minds. And honestly, I'm still waiting for you guys to disagree on something. I was promised fireworks and everything else in between.
Well, we're only 2 riders in.
Yeah, that's very true as well. And that might come across once we switch things over to the green machines with Jason Anderson, and Adam Cianciarulo. Let's talk about JA21 right off the hop. A guy who won 7 races last year, seemed like a complete career renaissance. When everyone counts this guy out, he's like, he doesn't train enough. He doesn't take it seriously. Team fried this, team fried that. You don't ride that consistently, that fast without being in shape. You know, the guy puts in the time, you know, the guy is locked in. And honestly, I think he has a great approach to, like, of all the factory guys. I think he might be the only one who isn't a complete head case. Like, there's not a single racer out there that isn't a little bit upstairs. Like, you guys know what I mean? But Jason Anderson, like, he's like Teflon. Nothing sticks to that guy. He's got the shortest memory in professional motocross. He could have the worst heat race of his life, still come out, lead laps, ride like we can, like, untucked jersey, the whole 9 yards. I really like what I'm seeing from Jason Anderson, and I expect him to maybe not 7 wins this year, but he's going to be there every single weekend. What do you think, Debo?
Yeah, his podium interviews are always classic. You know, he's having the time of his life. As far as being mental a little bit, you know, I think now that he's married, he's out of California, he's down in New Mexico. He has a good people around him, good confidence wise. I think he's not worrying about what's going on outside of motocross. I think motocross Supercross is 100% focus right now, which can be difficult sometimes. I think we've all heard the same interviews from the Kawasaki guys discussing his work ethic. You know, he's there from sun up to sundown and insisting to the team, let's just keep working. You know, as long as the team's working, I've heard great things about him from Ivan Tedesco, talked with him at Millville. I think I just saw a Dean Wilson clip on that Gypsy podcast where even Dean was saying, I've learned so much from Jason, his years at Husky, the way he tests and his passion and his willingness to stay late, work hard on the motorcycle, which is obviously key right now. Jason seems to know what he likes. He seems to have a great relationship with Brock Tickle, with Brock helping develop the bike there at Kawasaki. And again, 7 wins. He had that big crash at Detroit where he pulled off, and then he reeled off 4 victories there at the end of the season. I think Jason is in a good spot, good place. The Cowie, he loves the bike. Got away from that Husky. He did great at Husky, but the Kawasaki, man, I really didn't expect that from him. It came out of left field for me as a fan, and just kind of been studying the riders. But again, I thought maybe with him coming to this year, with more attention being focused on him, that might weigh on him. But with the whole Kenny debacle and the whole World Supercross and the Paris and Eli winning over there, I haven't heard anything about Jason. You know, El Hombre. I think him flying under the radar again is the best thing that could be happening for his psyche, his attention, his focus. I think he's going to come out swinging at A1 as hard as anybody.
What do you think, Checkers?
Well, I mean, definitely Jason Anderson likes to ride his dirt bike more than probably anyone else in the field. And that's a huge advantage at that level, you know, to not be burnt out and want to ride. And if you look back at his 450 career, other than after Bobby Hewitt got let go from Husky, he's had pretty dang good results, maybe better than you expect. Not just his championship year in 2018. He was a contender on the podium and winning races. And honestly, if you look back at last year, he eliminates the mistakes, and Eli's in huge trouble for hurting his knee at the end of the season. And we very well would be looking at a different champion. So hopefully he's matured and learned from his mistakes to not make those, not get into some of those drama moments that sucked him in. And no one's going to attack harder. No one is better racecraft, in my opinion, than Jason Anderson. He knows how to go forward. He knows how to make passes. Like I said, if he eliminates those mistakes and comes in year 2 with a Cowie team that it kind of looks from the outside very similar to how he was with Bobby Hewitt. He seems to just gel there. It's like a family to him. And that's when he does his best work, is when he's happy and comfortable. I think Denny nailed it when he said he's under the radar a little bit. You know, after his championship year, it really held him back. I know he absolutely hated all the media attention and stuff he had to do. It didn't work for him. He wants to go ride his dirt bike, focus on that, do his job. And I think he's going to be able to do that because of all the other stuff going on, all the other storylines. And again, I think he learned from it to stay a little bit more under the radar, come in and do his job. I think to get 7 wins again, it would be gnarly in this field. But you have to think he made a step forward. He's another year on the bike, another year more comfortable with the team. And he didn't have to go through a big change like Eli Tomac on a brand new bike. You know, this is something that he knows well, and he's only going to make progress. I think that I'm a huge Jason Anderson fan, so I'm almost trying to be non-biased and talk myself out of him being one of the absolute title favorites, and to put him right in the mix. But man, it's hard not to. Like, he tied Eli on wins last year, so is he a title favorite?
Well, the biggest thing is him and Malcolm need to come to a truce before the season even starts.
Oh yeah,
shake hands, some type of agreement. You know, that because both of their I don't want to say stupidity, but their passion for wanting to kill one another, it definitely affected both their seasons dramatically. You could count a 4 or 5 times, nearly 3 to 5 times, where these two took each other out, and it changed everything. It changed the course of both their seasons. And to want to win a championship, you got to fly under the radar each and every race, just like more like Eli does. Eli has no enemies. You know, nobody's going to mess with him. When Jason and Malcolm get around each other, and Barsha, obviously, there's just sparks to fly. And as a fan, I think it's outstanding. I have no problem with anything at all. But if you're going to want to win a championship, you got to squash those beefs before the season even starts, and avoid bringing them back up. Because if you got to worry about like Malcolm or Barsha behind you, or you get around them, you're not going to survive 17 rounds and 20 minutes plus 1 lap. So for me, that I completely kind of forgot about that. That's the biggest thing for Jason. He needs to avoid those situations at all costs.
100%. I think if you can do your best impression of Ryan Dungey and make sure that you're not on anybody's shit list, and you're just getting stuff done week in and weekend out, you put yourself in a good position to be successful weekend every single season. The one thing that I think that Jason Anderson has really mastered is that the art of scarcity. Like, there aren't too many people who know much about his program as far as his training. Like, they don't see him. He's like, no one has a book on him. And I think that is what sort of strikes fear into the rest of his competitors. In fact, I sort of see when he gets in behind Eli Tomac, I think Jason Anderson might be the only person who can kind of make Eli squirm a little bit. And that is a very powerful position to be in, rolling into a season where Eli, coming off of obviously an extremely successful season, but also a new motorcycle that probably doesn't have all the different trick parts on it that he needs to have, or maybe they're a little bit behind on stuff like that. Regardless, even if it's an improved motorcycle, it's still an adjustment. And I think that's like, as far as they tied on wins last year, I think that makes advantage Anderson.
Jason's ability to just get behind guys and strike so fast when he makes passes, catch them.
Just ask Cole Seeley.
Absolutely. Cole had to happen a ton. And I mean, he's just so explosive. And I think that's where he's able to get guys super uneasy. And because they not only know that he's going to pass them quickly, but he's not scared to rub plastics and make contact. He's one of the best at it. And yeah, it's going to make them uncomfortable, because Eli wants to avoid those situations at all costs, because he would rather take a second than get knocked down. Yeah,
that old theory of, to catch a guy is one thing, to pass a guy is another, or getting stuck behind a guy and getting stuck in their pace. Great example, Checkers. Jason is definitely one of those guys that can make up 3 seconds, 2 laps, and all of a sudden pass you and be gone past you. And you could see him on TV almost baffled, how, like, where did you catch that? Where did he catch me? And how the hell did he just pass me and gap me by a half, 3 bike lengths that quickly? So he, like, again, goes back to what Brad said, that Jason is so good. He has no memory of what he did the lap before. If he did something bad, he can just overcome it. If he messed up in a section of whoops or something, boom, the next lap, he hits them 100%, like he didn't have a problem with them. And that was a great example. I think that's a huge, huge spot for Jason, is he doesn't worry about yesterday or the lap before. It's every day's tomorrow, and every lap's a new lap.
For certain. And I think one of my greatest memories of Jason is maybe my favorite win of his, which happened to be in Oakland 2017, I believe. I think it was either 17 or 18 in Oakland, when the track was absolute decimated. It was bomb holes everywhere. And the only person who wasn't having issues with every single section of that track was Jason Anderson. I think he came from the back that night and was able to get the win.
When he passed Kenny on the last lap, I think.
Yeah. He passed Kenny.
That was gnarly. Yeah. And how about Salt Lake City? Or was that the round when he got that flat tire and he had to stop and change a wheel? A lot of riders would have panicked, pulled the panic chute, parachute, and he didn't even phase him. Came back and got that title.
He's got ice in his veins.
Having a title from 2018, it's now 2023. That's a huge gap. I mean, have we even seen another rider come from a title to being a title contender 4 to 5, 6 years later? I mean, this is unrivaled, I believe.
The only other guy who's done something like that is Ryan Dungey, who won the 2010 title as a rookie, then had some like 4 helpings of humble pie served up by Ryan Villapoto for 4 years, and then came back 2015, 2016, and 17, won those titles. But other than that, basically unheard of. Same thing with, I guess, Chad Reed winning in 04 and then coming back and winning the 2008 outdoor Supercross title. So that was 4 years between. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't happen very often.
Very good. Well, we got two big contenders already out of the way out of the bat, Sexton and Anderson. I mean, I think it's going to come down to at least those two. If not the one down the list a little further on the blue bike.
For certain. But honestly, there's another guy on a Kawasaki who he has potential in his own right. Like, Lord knows where he's at as far as his confidence and where he's at with his career. If you asked us here, if we were sitting here in 2013 rolling into Supercross, everyone would have been talking about watch out for Adam Cianciarulo. A lot of time has passed since then, a lot of injuries, a lot of inconsistency. And honestly, like I can't fault the guy for being a little bit down in the dumps about things, because he was supposed to be the next guy. And yeah, he's got an outdoor title, but wasn't able to wrap up a Supercross title. I don't think that's got to still sting a little bit here and there. Checkers, what do you expect from Adam Cianciarulo in 2023? Honestly, it could be everywhere on the spectrum. He could be, he could lead laps. He could be his overall, his average finish last year with an injury was an 11th. Honestly, I don't know what to expect from him at all.
Well, I mean, I think one thing I think you can expect is there's no way in heck he should be down in the dumps. He has a 2-year contract after having a bunch of disastrous years. I don't know what the heck Kawasaki's thinking, giving him a 2-year deal. Do I think makes sense that, okay, we want to work with him another year. We want to give him a chance, because there is some potential there. We've seen the speed, and they always say we can work with speed, right? But again, I'm hearing the same thing, and I listened to an interview where he's still dealing with numbness in his hands, which is what he came into last year with. And luckily this time he's had a little bit of training and stuff, because last year he was coming in completely not even been on the bike, and he would get good starts, which is a huge plus for him. He's going to start up front. He can do one lap with some speed, but he was riding around and just gradually going backwards. And the problem with that is trying to ride to not get hurt and instead of trying to race forward, it never works out. In fact, that's usually when you get hurt. And I think it's really tough for him to come in without a mentality like that, not at 100%, and perform. I would love nothing more than to see Adam Cianciarulo rattle off some podiums and be a contender and be the guy that we know that he can be, or at least have the potential to be. History shows that it's really difficult for him. And with he's coming in under the radar, or not under the radar, underprepared, because he's not healthy. Yeah, he's just not being healthy. It's terrible. It sucks. Like, if he was coming in healthy, I already have a bet ready to be made that he would podium a race. No problem. I would make that bet.
Oh, for sure.
Before Daytona, the first half of the year. But he's coming in unhealthy. I can't make that bet. I can't. There's just too many question marks there. And I don't see it getting better going through the season. So I unfortunately think it's not looking good. And it wouldn't surprise me before the halfway point of the season that we see another rider, maybe Joey Savacci again, riding that motorcycle under the tent.
Yeah, that's very true. And we've discussed Adam a lot on our text thread with a lot of uncertainty of what his career has been up to this point. He's had a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but recently a lot of lows, and you can just hear it in his voice when he speaks about his racing. Just that little blip commercial that they have for Monster, where he's talking about how many times he's been under gone into surgery in the last 18 months, and he flat out says in this commercial, like, I don't want to go under anymore. I don't want to have any more surgeries, And then I haven't listened to his latest interview, but I guess a lot of people said he was also he just kind of sensed it in his voice. And, you know, motocross is obviously one of the gnarliest things in the history in the world. And you certainly cannot come to entering it with any kind of self-doubt, any questions. Again, like Checker said, riding not to get hurt. That's just a recipe for disaster. So for even Adam to tell Weege at the 23's, press conference that, kind of divulged that he still has numbness in his hand. It's almost as though he's setting himself up for, again.
Yeah, he's letting everybody know this might not go well.
Yeah. I mean, that is exactly it. And if you're coming in with already a defeated attitude, man, that's not going to bode well for yourself. And that's a shame, because Adam is a great rider and he can lay down some fast laps. And he, I was looking at his career results here. He, except for last season, when he was just melting Supercross because he was hurt, he lines up, he's guaranteed a top 5, top 10 finish. I mean, all of his results are single digits. Rarely is he ever running back in the pack. If he's healthy, he's running up top 5, no problem. Whether it be an outdoor, whether it be Supercross. But again, if he's coming in already at 85%, 8%, and can't hold on, coming in with a bum knee is bad enough, bum ankle. But, I rode with a bad wrist for 18 months, a year and a half. And if you can't hold on, there's nothing really you can do about it. You can't help yourself. You got to slow down or risk crashing. And then crashing just adds on to your lack of confidence and what else is ailing you, because this day and age, you're jumping these 450s, you're jumping so big, so far, you're going so fast through the whoops. A simple crash can be quite devastating. So I'm hoping the best for Adam. But again, like Checkers, I wouldn't be surprised to see round 5, 6, 7, 8 that maybe Joey's on that green bike.
Yeah, honestly, like the one thing you can't do in professional motocross is ride to not get hurt. Like, it sounds kind of crazy, but you got to think of it. He has to be truly successful. You have to say, yeah, I've been under the knife 25 times. I'd be willing to go under another 25 times, because there's you can't hold back. It has to be 100%, because guess what? The rest of the guys who are also within 1% of you are all going 100%. They're not going to hold back. Anderson's not going to hold back. Eli's not going to hold back. Neither is Chase. So if we're dealing with 95% of Adam Cianciarulo, that's not going to be enough.
No,
what do you think, Check?
That puts him 10th. Yeah.
Yeah, the field's just too deep for that. And I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I really do. Like I said, nothing would be better than to have him leading the sport, at a very high level. He's such a good role model, such a good speaker. Like
100%.
He checks all of those boxes, and people want him to do well. They really do. I'm trying to be realistic, and I've been let down a lot of times. I've held out hope that it's going to happen. And, in his 250 career, it started off great, and then it went extremely poorly. Actually, it started poorly when he went outdoors, but when he started Supercross, it was really, really good. And then it went poorly, and it took a long time for him to build, but he did figure it out. He did almost get it done, but I mean, he was the guy, and then he figured out to the outdoors, and I hope that happens. But history says that it's pretty difficult. You start to get further and further behind, and it's harder and harder to make up that ground. And the fact is yes, he has a lot of talent, but talent alone isn't going to get it done.
Certainly. No, I think he's gonna be up against it this year. And unless he can find some confidence, honestly, the best thing that Adam Cianciarulo can do in the first round is if can capture lightning and grab a win, then that might put some wind back into his sails to be like, you know what, I am back. I can continue moving forward. But if he comes out and has I think maybe nobody more needs a good Anaheim 1 than Adam Cianciarulo.
Or Ken.
Wow, we'll get to him.
But yeah, no, it is. And it's anything, like anything in life, the better you can start out, it puts you, it gets that confidence rolling. It's a snowball effect. It's much easier to roll downhill than it is to roll uphill, to start the season 10th, not feeling good, not happy about the bike. But guys have done it, and they've overcome it and come back to win. But for Adam, most definitely, the best thing for him would be to get a solid finish, have confidence in his hand, get to that first heat race really well, and lead some laps as he's done. He's a great starter. But, when he gets lap 8 or so, and maybe his hand goes start weak or whatever starts to ail him, or if he hasn't been training, and then these guys start passing you, and you're just looking over your shoulder, like who's coming next. That's really tough to overcome. But as of right now, I think Adam is we just look for him to try and stay healthy and get through the whole year. That would be the most beneficial thing, I think, for Adam as a racer and mental. And he's got a 2-year deal, like Checker said. So if he can just get through the season healthy, put in 17 rounds, I think that's pretty successful.
It's pretty tough to motivate yourself to push through an injury. I feel like when you have the comfort of a whole lot of money in your bank account and a 2-year deal, like at what point does he say, well, I'm not riding for a contract, I'm going to try to get myself 100% and attack the outdoors? It's that mentality happens with guys a lot when they're in a secure situation. So it just makes it a little bit easier versus trying to push through
when your back's not up against the wall.
Things. Right. Which, I mean, honestly, I would rather see him get it healthy and be ready for outdoors too than have it cause a crash and then it's another injury piled on top of it that he's dealing with. It's those injuries add up, and he's getting older, and he's not the old guy in the class by any means, but you're starting to feel those pains and that side of things as you get older as well. So let's hope that the issue isn't nearly as bad as it was last year, and maybe that it's taken care of before the first race and he's able to put in a solid main event of 20 minutes plus a lap, and he can stand somewhere on that podium this year. It'd be great to see. It'd be a great story
for sure. Like fingers crossed. I think all three of us are would like to see Adam have some success in this class, especially in Supercross, where he does show speed every single time he's on the track. Let's switch gears from we'll leave one manufacturer. We'll keep the same energy drink sponsor, move on over to the Star Racing Monster Energy Yamaha team. And let's just we would be remiss without starting with the champ. Last year, average start 5th, which Eli's never been known for having awesome starts, but starting in the top 5, you're always going to put yourself in a good position to you got at least 3/4 of the 3/4 of the class behind you. And then more often than not, he's on the podium. In fact, his average finish is a podium finish. You guys have been watching this guy since he first turned pro, won his very first win at Hangtown 2010. He's really coming into his own. It's I wouldn't say a farewell tour, but this is the last time that we're going to see Eli Tomac really challenge for a championship. And I think he wants to go out with a bang. I think Eli Tomac is in a great space mentally. I think he's in a great space physically. He's not really battling anything. Anything he was dealing with, that knee at the end of Supercross, obviously is not an issue anymore, given the fact that he was still being able to be extremely fast outdoors. And then also raced off-season races. You don't see a guy racing off-season races if they're nursing any type of injury. Checkers, I'll let you start off on Eli Tomac. Last year's champ. Will he be this year's champ?
Well, I think the key right there is that he's on his way out. So I don't think it's ever a question of he's going to work just as hard. He's Eli Tomac. He's probably going to be training when he's done. I think going over to the Monster Energy Star Racing Yamaha team, it energized him and made it fun again. And I mean, you could definitely tell he's having more fun. Plus, winning is awesome. It's when you're losing that it sucks. So I think all of that stuff's lining up to be good. The one thing that's tough is Denny and I have talked about this before. We were talking about it with Brayton last year. Like when you're done after the season, it's really tough to stay motivated and to take those chances. And again, we just talked about, you can't ride to not get hurt. So Eli somehow is going to have to put that out of his brain. I don't think that's going to be an issue as far as that, because I think he, like you said, he wants to go out with a bang. I think the big issue there is there's a new motorcycle over there. And we heard all about last year how great this new KTM is, how it's going to fix all the problems. And it's way better Supercross bike for these guys. And guess what? That bike was not very good. If you watch the races, it was very, very apparent. And I have heard that Eli's not gelling with that bike nearly as well as Ferrandis is. And we've all seen Eli when he was at Cowie, when he was not comfortable on the motorcycle, riding around and getting 8th place. That is not going to get a championship done when you have an up-and-coming Chase Sexton, a Jason Anderson that was ready to attack at any point. And then the final piece, I'm hearing lots of rumors that the reason the bikes are not in dealerships or just are getting to dealerships is they're having clutch issues. There's not one rider on the racetrack that is harder on clutch than Eli Tomac. So if they're having clutch issues with the bike, that is a huge, huge problem for Tomac. Yes, can they do things on the factory level to fix it? Well, to an extent, but I mean, how many times do we see his Cowie smoking with a hot clutch? And they had plenty of years to fix that with a very good team.
Yeah.
Well, let me say proudly and happily, Eli Tomac is dead. He's no longer with us. That was my nickname for Eli when he had a lot of rough seasons with Cowie.
So
I felt like
I'll cut you off 1 second there, Denny. If Elito Tomac or Elito Mac comes back for Anaheim 1, I need you to just tweet out, he's risen.
he's back from the dead. Yes. No, you know, I always felt that Eli was not riding his potential. I mean, we've all seen how well he can ride, and then one little hiccup can just totally snowball with him. And I kind of gave him a lot of shit about it with Lido Mac. We even messaged back and forth a few times about it. And,
little Denny.
But when he signed that contract in October, I think that next day I posted something on Instagram, said, "This is your 22 Supercross champion." And I really believe that him getting out of Cowie, not that anything's wrong with Cowie, but a new world, a new sight, a new vision, a new vibe was going to help him. And it did. And we saw the true Eli Tomac having fun, smiling. We know he's one of the best shaped guys out there. We know that he can turn out a lap faster than probably anybody ever has since James. And he did. It was great to watch. I'm a huge fan. I've been a fan, even though I was giving him shit about it. But as Checker said, with this 2022, 2023 bikes, if a rider of Eli who's on his way out, man, I don't understand why you wouldn't just let him ride that 22 bike. I mean, tell the fans.
I'm never going to let that happen.
This is what he likes. No, I know. Checkers and I argue back and forth on that, But, look at McGrath. McGrath raced an old Honda frame for 5 years when he was out with them, or however long he raced with them. He did not ride the stock, that production bike. He rode the old bike. And I think there's no reason why. If you want to win a title, you let Eli ride his old bike and go win it or go do the best he can with his comfort on. Dylan's comfortable in the 2023. You got Kenny riding a 5-year-old bike. So let's just go ride whatever you're comfortable on and let Eli go out and win.
Carmichael's 07.
Yeah, right. So I think Kenny he just changed the stickers toward the RCH stickers off and to some progressive stickers on. It's going to go racing, but that's another topic here we'll get to. But for me, I think Eli's the favorite. I don't see any reason why he will not continue his dominance, and not dominance, but confidence and speed and rhythm that he just looks so good on that Yamaha, unless he doesn't gel on that new bike. And that'll be a shame that in his last year that he, after coming off the year of his career, he gets on a bike that again isn't gelling with. But look at what Star's doing. Star's willing to do anything they can. They don't have to answer necessarily to the Japanese like Kawasaki had to. So I think that they'll make it everything they can. They will do within their means. And I don't expect Eli any less than a podium coming out of A1. Last year he came out with a 7th or a 6th. I don't see that. I think he's coming out guns a-blazing from the beginning.
If Eli Tomac, go ahead.
I was saying the whole field's definitely in trouble if he continues to get reasonably good starts, because that was a big crutch as well for him. That was causing a lot of the 8th place finishes, was he was getting poor starts and then couldn't ride forward because the bike wasn't good. So if he can at least start up front, he's going to stay somewhere near the front, even if he's not comfortable on the bike on his off nights, and he's going to avoid those, kind of crappy finishes and that side of things. And I don't know how you can't doubt the guy coming off of the year that he just had. He absolutely crushed everybody everywhere he went last year. And darn it, he's Captain America, baby. Took that Destinations win home for all of us Americans. You have to be a fan of him. And, man, he was dominant. So hopefully he can overcome the motorcycle. He has the guys there that on the team that he wants, that he's comfortable with, that know how to make him happy. So I don't see it being a problem, although that will be the reason that he doesn't win. If he doesn't, is the new motorcycle.
Absolutely. I think the only thing we can do here is sort of try and poke some holes as to how we won't be as good as he was last year. The only thing you can really say is that maybe he doesn't gel as well as he did with the new bike as he did with the old bike. And we saw in 2017, like he started off the year with a pair of 7th place finishes, which he attributed to arm pump. Like you're not getting arm pump being one of the fittest guys in the class. It comes down to bike setup and not being comfortable on the machine. So if that rears its ugly head again, if he complains about arm pump, or if you start seeing him change a lot of things about the front end of the motorcycle, that is, to me, a little bit of a cause for worry. But for all intents and purposes, I think that Eli Tomac is going to come out swinging. I think he's going to be fast. I think he's going to be as advertised. And honestly, I've never wanted to party with a professional athlete as much as when I saw him like 7-8 beers deep, just pouring beer on himself and just being an absolute hooligan. Like, I don't think what was that like Eli Tomac's first, second, third, fourth, and fifth beer he's ever had in his entire life?
I messaged him after donations. We got Checkers and I were there with all of our buddies, and we loved it. We loved going to donations, and for them to win like that. And I had messaged Eli and said, "Man, I told you donations matters, and I'm so happy for you. Congratulations." And he responded back basically with the simple words, "Donations matter." That was the greatest feeling ever, and you could just see it. And I'm so happy he got to experience that, along with Chase, along with Justin Cooper. And so, I was just really happy that he's found the speed, found the happiness. And I think we'll know right away in his first interviews after practice, after the heat race and the main event. And if he's not happy, he's one that tends to kind of carry his emotions on his sleeve. If he's not grinning ear to ear, there's something going on behind those eyes that I think that he's kind of obvious about. So I think we'll know real quickly if that he's not gelling.
Speaking of guys who wear their emotions on their sleeve, he's got a teammate who has the inability to not let everybody know how he feels about just about anything, including bike setup. And that's Dylan Ferrandis, your 2021 outdoor champion. Honestly, Dylan, aside from a Supercross championship, which he was extremely dominant on a 250, 450 wise, you haven't seen a lot of really good success from him. Like, he doesn't get good starts. In fact, for the most part, wherever he starts, he usually finishes. He's not a great passer in Supercross. And like, I have my doubts on Dylan as far as Supercross wise. I think outdoors, he's one of the best. But Supercross, I think, is something that even like the 450 seems to have presented him with some problems that I don't think he's calculated for.
No, I agree with you on 100%. That one race in 21 at Supercross, it was the one where it was the one section was leading for a long time and then crashed, pitched away in that sand section, kind of flew over the jump and landed body wide into it. Yeah. Dylan kind of came through the pack that race, got up to I think he got a second or third that night. Yep. And the track was kind of breaking down, real sandy. What race was it? You thought?
Marshall one. It was Houston.
Might have been Houston. Yeah. And it had a big long sand section. And I was watching with my dad, and he's like, man, watching Ferrandis is like watching Hannah race. I mean, his feet are off the pegs. Like, he's not concerned about style. He's not concerned about being precise over the rhythm sections and stuff. He's just like he rides outdoors, balls to the wall, which is very beneficial when you have a two-minute track to ride on with a lot more room. And Supercross, things are so big. The jumps are so, rhythm sections are so big. The whoops are so gnarly that I don't think you can ride that way and survive. And Dylan's proven, he hasn't really been able to do that on a 450. And again, like you said, terrible starts, unable to come to the pack with those bad starts. He's got some work to do. And, I was blown away how fast he went to Nations, because he did not show a lot of speed when he came back injured in the outdoors here. But if he can get some good starts, start up top 5, see what those guys up front are doing. I mean, we all know, every rider knows, if you can get out front and see what the guys are doing who are beating you, and then start getting into the rhythm and see how to do it every lap, how to do it every race, something clicks. And it could for Dylan, because obviously he's one of the world's best, but he struggles in Supercross. He just needs to kind of figure out his rhythm a little bit better, and he definitely needs to figure out his starts.
Yes. Checkers, what are your thoughts on Dylan? Honestly, this guy, he's a bit frustrating when it comes to starts. Like, if I was a Dylan Ferrandis fan, I would be livid when I'm looking at the tower on the first lap, and I see that guy in 12th, 13th spot. knowing that honestly, these races are long, but in Supercross, they're really not. Like 20 minutes is not a lot of time. You basically have to if he starts out, say if he starts out 10th, he has to make a pass every 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've seen a top level rider that's such a poor starter since Michael Rocco. Like, it's been a long time since we've seen someone that literally can probably run up near the podium if he would just get a start, and he never gets a start. It's not like every now and again he gets a good start. He never gets a start. It was amazing. So he's going into year 3, which, as we talked about with Sexton, year 3 is the magic year. You figure it out. Well, he's going into year 3. He's got 2 podiums and 5 top 5s in 2 years of Supercross. And for a guy that's been at the level that he's ridden outdoors on a 450, and he's proven he can ride Supercross on a 250, that is not acceptable results for Dylan Ferrandis. I personally think that he figures it out this year. I'm hearing he really likes the new bike. I think that helps. I would hope that he's done nothing but practice starts during the off season and figured them out. He has a ton of talent and can do some magical things on the bike. And he's a little bit wilder than Anderson, but he's got a little bit of that same style where he can turn a mistake almost into a positive. And, he doesn't get bothered by making little mistakes. The problem is his mistakes often put him on the ground. He has to figure that part out. But I think that we see the Ferrandis that we thought we were going to see in 2022, in 2023. I 100% think that he will be an improved rider, and he will be battling within the top 5 a lot more often. And she should be able to sneak some podiums.
I mean, last year, I'm looking at his results right now. He opened with the 16th at Anaheim, and he ended the season with the 19th at Detroit, which obviously Detroit claimed a lot of guys. So he bookended with some pretty shitty finishes, and with a 6th, a 3rd, a 4th, a 12th, a 6th, a 9th, a 7th, and a 4th. He raced 10 rounds last year. He hit the podium once, and he had three top 5s. Just for him to run consistently in the bottom half of the top 10 would be a successful season at this point, really. To ask for him to jump up and run anywhere near the pace of the top 4 guys, I think is kind of it might be asking a lot. To get him through all 17 rounds, anywhere between 4th to 9th, I think is to be a successful season for Ferrandis.
I think he's a start dependent top 5 guy. Like and he's shown me no indication that he's figured out his starts, but if for some reason the reason why the Yamahas were having a hard time getting to the dealership is because Dylan's going through so many goddamn clutches. That's the real reason why the bikes aren't available. Then thumbs up. I think he has the ability, like you said, Debo, like you get up there, you find what the pace is like up front, and then you run with them. You go with those guys. But if he continues to stay back there, he's going to be back there, because the difference between speed in the 12th, let's say, or 11th through 5th place guy, they're all the same guy. They're all they're logging the same lap times. They're hitting the same rhythm sections. And you're just going to get lost in the shuffle. And by the time you've made 2 or 3 passes, say you start 11th, by the time you're in 8th, the rest of those guys are gone.
Yeah, I experienced that with my racing. I felt that I could run with most guys, in outdoors and Supercross. But if I'm not going to catch them, I'm not going to pass them necessarily. I can run with them, but I'm sure the hell not going to come from 12th up to 6th. I can start 6th and get an 8th. And so I think that is definitely the case. Like you said, there's just such a good deep field that the only way you're going to really move up through the pack by starting behind them is by their crashes, their mistakes, and by you avoiding those same mistakes. Just getting a good start is key in any form of motorsports or motocross or indoors, outdoors. Fro build a career on getting hole shots and good starts, and Loralco made a career of getting shit starts and coming through the pack. And but right now, I think there's maybe 2-3 guys who can come to the pack in this field and get to the top 5 and podium, and we know who that 3 is. So, and Dylan currently is not one.
We've already talked about them. So let's talk quickly about the third member of the 450 team that's going to run select rounds. It's yet to be seen what rounds that's going to be. This is a really weird scenario. I don't know why the bike is going to be on the truck. The truck's not going back to California. The bike is going to be on the truck the entire year long. I don't know why Justin Cooper, Jay Coop, will not be racing all of the rounds. He won a championship for Star Racing Yamaha. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But in the rounds that he gets to race for the team, Checkers, how do you think Justin Cooper's going to do?
Yeah, so you don't want me to go off on this whole, we're just going to ease into things a little bit.
Please do.
That's going on in Supercross right now.
Yeah.
Why the heck aren't guys racing?
That's what 450 Supercross.
That's what you're paying these guys for, is racing, right? You have to assume you have Eli Tomac retiring. There's a 450 spot open on that truck next year. Don't you want to see what your 250 champion can do on a 450, and maybe he can be that guy for you? What the hell are you doing? Let the guy go race. He's a racer. You have the bike. You have the staff. It's not costing you that much more for him to go race. And
2 years ago, they ran 3 guys all year long.
It makes no sense, because here's the thing. If he's not racing, he's still at home riding. So don't give me the whole, oh, he might get hurt type of thing. Plus,
no, I think that's
that rookie 450.
Yeah, is that why do you think they're keeping? Do you think they might be trying to keep him healthy for the outdoors? I mean, that's my only rational thought on that.
That's what teams say and do these days, and then all the injuries happen when they're practicing pretty much anyways. But anyways, how does he do? Well, here's the thing.
Saving him for the outdoors, it doesn't make any sense to save him for the outdoors. Are you going to save him for the outdoors so that he can go race around in 6th? Well,
he's riding 250 outdoors, and they won a championship on that side of things. And I could see, let him start the year at least. Yeah. I'm hearing that they're going to bring him in the middle of the season. Let him start the year. So if it's going well, then you keep going. If it's not going well, okay, we're going to stop midway through the year. You're going to go test your 250, be 100% for the start of the outdoors. I can get on board with that as a strategy. That's not what they're doing. And I don't know if you guys paid attention and watched the sport, but how does it usually go when guys jump in the middle of the season?
Like jumping on a treadmill at Mach 5.
Right. The level goes up. He's got those first round problems and jitters and bike setup, because the racetracks are never like the practice tracks. Never. Here's the thing. You have a practice track. It sits there. It gets weathered. All the transitions are much smoother. And you get,
and the guys memorize every transition,
You memorize what the track like
that. It's absolutely the dumbest decision in the world, in my opinion. But how does he do? Honestly, if they put him in the middle of the season, I think he's chasing around the tail end of the top 10, if he's even in the top 10, because you can't put somebody into the middle of the season. I can see maybe he has a breakout ride at Daytona, but a lot of guys are good at Daytona, so it's not like he's going to break out there. I think the guy has quite a bit of talent. He's been a very good starter a lot of his career. And, man, I think that he needs to do well to make sure that he has a 450 spot, and they're not setting him up for success there. So I don't understand it. It's frustrating. If I were him, I would be asking, can I pay my own way to go race, to line up on the line at A1? He shouldn't have to do, but he won them a championship.
Yeah, I agree. If he doesn't line up at A1, it's the biggest mistake that Bobby Reagan and Stars made, and they don't make many mistakes over there. They build champions, win a lot of titles. You think somebody's got to be telling them, at least give him a shot. He went out there, first of all, congratulations, Jay Coop, fucking winning that Motocross Nations for us. Well done. If you're out there listening, if you're a family member, that was awesome. And give him a shot, man. I'm glad he was even going to ride 450. I heard he wasn't even going to ride any 450 Supercrosses, which I even felt we discussed. It was like, what is that all about? So to say he's only ride a handful of them, as Daniel Blair, I think, has said something already about as well. Bobby Reagan, don't be ridiculous. Put him on a 450 at A1, see what he can do. And like Checkers, he said, if he doesn't do well after a handful of rounds, he doesn't get those, doesn't feel comfortable on the bike, then set him back. But yeah, you don't put him in the middle of the season. And any motocrossers discussed that, any announcers discussed it. You start out the season injured, you show up at round 8, round 9, you're behind the 8 ball of speed, confidence, knowing how your bike's working, everything. Everything you said, Checkers, is, which I rarely say is 100% correct.
Yeah, this is an isolated topic that Checkers is 100% correct on. But my approach is why delay the answers that you need to certain questions? Like, can Jay Coop get used to an entire 17 race series? Like, if you delay this and for basically his 450 sort of rookie season by one season, all that means is that this time, or in 15 months from now, we're going to be hearing Justin Cooper talking about how much of an adjustment it is to 17 rounds, a long series, blah, blah, blah. it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like
you're basically throwing away the 2023 season. It's a total waste. If you don't if you do not attempt to race,
then don't have him race at all.
Yeah, you've totally wasted a year of experience for him. And if I'm Justin Cooper, I would have to be looking at it that way and going, you're wasting my time. You know, I need this. I need to try this and get that.
He's going to be riding
under your belt. Yeah.
He's going to be.
He's going to have to be riding every day if he plans to join the series midway. Fuck it, man. Line him up at the gate. Give him a shot. See what he can do. I agree. Yeah. Again, that's a great point. What a waste of a year if he does not fully commit to his rookie season.
Yeah, and don't forget, like Justin Cooper is older than most guys with his amount of years in the class. He turned pro at, I believe, 19 or 20 years old. So he didn't just like turn pro at 16 like everybody else. He had like a couple extra years on him, which means he probably has a little bit more man strength, even though he's not a big guy. He could probably handle the bike a little bit better, I think. And honestly, a full season of racing a 450 outdoor, like indoors, would build up the strength, stamina, and ability he needs to drop back down to the 250 for the outdoors and just crush it, very much like the great Ricky Carmichael did in 1999.
I guess the only thing that I could see is, are they trying to wait till the field's depleted with injuries a little bit so he doesn't take a big confidence hit? That's the only thing that I can think of. I mean, there is another rider that we'll get to discuss that did do that and jumped into the 450 class that was depleted with injuries and put in some great results to build his confidence. But
yeah,
that's the only explanation that I can even potentially think of for them is for him to do that. But it makes no sense to me. And I mean, they're the ones that are running the team. They're way smarter than I am, most likely, with this stuff. But I think they're making a huge mistake.
And Justin Cooper, for just note, he is 24 years old. So that's
there you go. Him and AC are like 6 months apart. That's awesome. Like I'm gonna make a fortune on Let J Coop Ride t-shirts coming to you coming to you at a moment's notice. Let's switch things over to the Austrian brands, which means we're going to be in colors orange, white, and red for the next 25 minutes, maybe more. We might just spend 25 minutes talking about how Aaron Plessinger's starts are never any good either. But let's start with AP. The number 7 in your program, number 1 in your hearts, especially if you're a country music fan, 19th in points last year. I think this guy, maybe more than anyone aside from, I don't think there's a single guy on the line in the field on a factory bike who needs to have a big year other than Aaron Plessinger. Like, am I crazy in thinking that he's sort of riding for a job? Because like last year was not good, indoors or out.
I will lead with this. My biggest concern with AP, Mr. Aaron Plessinger, it was leaving Yamaha. You know, going to KTM, I said from the day one, as soon as I heard it, I'm like, this is a terrible idea. You know, Star is fun. It lets you do what should be you. Austrian brands with Roger and the KTM and Alden. That's everything that Aaron Plessinger is not. You know, I mean, it is not. I believe he's a hard worker. I believe he's a trainer, but I don't know if he's a ground and pounder like he has to do every day at Alden. The bike is much different, obviously, with the steel frame compared to the Yamaha. I didn't like the change at all for him, and so far the change has proven me correct. And that he's not bode well on this orange bike. You know, last season he opened up. Where is he on here? Opened up with a 9th at A1, got a 2nd, a podium next round, a 6th the next one, and then a 22nd, 11th, a 9th, and a 7th, and he was gone. And we didn't see him really all year for the rest of Supercross. He had a couple decent finishes in outdoors. If AP ain't being AP, I think it stifles him, and I think his style just suits the yellow bike or the blue bike a little bit better than the KTM. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope he comes out with some results, because obviously he's a great fan favorite. See him on the podium, enjoying life, loving life, gets everybody fired up. But I still think he's got a long ways to go as well, and just to run consistent top 5s. Otherwise, I think we're seeing again anywhere from 6th to 12th all season long.
Checkers.
It's pretty nuts that there was almost a bidding war for him when he went to KTM. There was a lot of hype about AP. But if I went back and actually looked at the results sometime this summer, and then right before we did this podcast, and in 2021, when he had all that hype, he only had 4 top 5 finishes. and only one of them was a podium. Like, the hype was a lot higher than really the results showed. And the last year was an absolute disaster. There's no other way to say it. It was an absolute disaster. I couldn't believe it when I went back and looked and reminded myself, oh, he got a podium in Supercross last year at round 2.
Second.
And then, I mean, he did have an Ironman podium that was pretty cool. I mean, that was good or whatever. But other than that, it was a disaster. But I'm going to try to be positive and try to say, okay, that's year 2 with Alden. So we've seen Alden do some magic with some guys, but we've also seen him struggle with guys like AP, where, you know, like the Tickles of the world or the Weimers, where he couldn't really help them or fix them. But I'm gonna say he built that base, and maybe he's good, and maybe he has it. But then it comes to the motorcycle that I mean, we're going to talk about it, I guarantee, a ton with the next couple of guys, or maybe all of the whole group that we're going to talk about.
Every single one of them.
And I'm not convinced it's fixed after, I don't know if you guys watched the Paris Supercross, but there was a couple orange bikes that could not get through the whoops that were, yes, they were big and scary looking, but they had a nice transition into them and were almost easier than a lot of the stuff we see in the US. And those guys were still struggling in them. Like, and I feel like AP he doesn't look good on the KTM. He looks huge on it, in my opinion.
He does. He looks massive on that.
It's hard for me, but dude, I think he's competing for a ride. Absolutely. I think if he doesn't perform this year, then he's looking to be riding a yellow bike alongside Kenny, or maybe riding a Moto Concepts bike, something along those lines. I don't see him on one of the elite factory teams next year, even with the great personality that he has and the fun-loving attitude. Or maybe he's going to put some bark busters back on and go back to hanging out in the woods, and he's really good at that.
Yeah, honestly, like I think that AP has some serious soul searching to do, and like he's known to not be the best tester in the world. He's been known to struggle with that, and I think that even compounds the issues that he's having with that motorcycle. And I think honestly, if you gave AP some truth serum at the beginning of last year, would you be happy, like even prior to the season starting, are you happy moving to the KTM? He'd probably say no. Just given the fact that the bike does not look settled. I see when I watch a lot of the videos from the KTM guys, I see a lot of clipping of rhythm sections. I see a lot of packing in the whoops, and a lot of guys who just don't look comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. I think that AP has to figure some things out, and I hope that Al didn't break him. But you know, if he doesn't end up with a ride somehow and has a bad season, and he goes woods riding, joins in 2024 with Oz and GNCC, I wouldn't be surprised for that, and I think he'd probably crush it out there. So
why did he look better on a 2-stroke at straight rhythm than he did last year in Supercross?
Because everyone else was just as uncomfortable.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Well, I think we're ready to move on. What do you think?
Absolutely. So let's go on to your 2-time Supercross champion, 7th last year, after what was dubbed the best off season ever. Cooper Webb, he's married. He's got a kid now. He's back on the Alden Baker program. Last year, his starts were just outside the top 5. His average finish was just outside the top 5. Honestly, unless Cooper really has like bought in again, which I would assume he has, but honestly, like I don't know him to be this like hammerhead trainer to just switch things back around. I'm kind of expecting more of the same from Cooper Webb in 2023. I kind of expect him to be a 4th, 5th, 6th guy with some heat race wins and maybe giving Ken Roxon some fits here and there, because those guys like to butt heads. But aside from that, I actually don't expect a lot from Cooper Webb in 2023. Maybe you guys prove me wrong, but I don't see it.
I mean, I guess if you look at Eli Tomac or Jason Anderson, being happy with your program can breed some really good results. I mean, I think all of us have ridden dirt bikes, and you always do your best work when you're happy. And 100%. So going back to a program that you hated and you don't want to be at, is that going to work? How do you expect that to fix the problem? I see Cooper Webb riding out his contract this year. Honestly, yep. I don't think that he will know that going in. I feel like he's putting in the work, he's trying, and he's mentally tough. But the fact of the matter is, when he shows up at round one, doesn't get the result that he wants, it starts to get easier and easier to just ride out the contract and say, I'm going to go somewhere else next year because I'm not happy. Or maybe he just says, I'm over this completely. Like we've seen so many people that have gotten burnout from the Baker program. Just say, hey, I'm done. I have plenty of money in the bank. I won my championship. I'm done. I don't see that. I see him going to find another team and trying to find their opportunity where he'll be happy and can maybe have a little bit more fun. But it's not fun grinding if you don't want to be there and you're not all in. And if he was going to be all in, I don't think you see him racing a bunch of local races in the summer. I think you see him on the starting line at pro motocross or doing nothing at all.
Yeah, no, I think that was a really odd schedule that he kept over this last year. And all those signs point to him just sort of like, I wouldn't say mailing it in, but like, I certainly don't see him being able to come back to the form that he was once at. He doesn't look happy. He doesn't look energized. And honestly, he used to have a little bit of snarl on him when he'd come to the line. Like he was kind of like had that sort of that little smirk on his face that he's like, yeah, I'm gonna mess some people up today. And he hasn't had that since the tail end of the 2020 season.
Yeah, and then taking the summer off and experiencing the fun of life. I flash back to hearing the Bradshaw stories of stayed home and discovered that there's life besides dirt bikes, and he was never the same after. And I have a feeling that Cooper Webb just went through that, and I was hoping that he would show up and be gnarly Cooper and ready to prove a point at Paris, and he just reaffirmed that things are just as crappy as they were all last year.
Debo, do you know what it's like to find out that there's some things other than dirt bikes?
Well, I kind of lived that life anyways. You know, I always knew that motocross wasn't going to last forever. And as long as I'm racing a dirt bike, I'm going to make the most of it, no matter what city I'm in, no matter what state I'm in, no matter what country I'm in, you know, and it is, you know, and, you know, first let me say, you know, obviously we all agree that those two titles that Cooper Webb won were phenomenal. I mean, his racecraft, his undying, never giving up, you know, wearing Kenny down, were awesome to watch. I mean, it was incredible to just watch someone, but I think also in the same breath that his style, the way he won those championships, don't transfer into today's, you know, it's only been 2 years, but not even that, it's been a year. I don't think transfer over into speed and the way that Tomac rides, Chase rides, and Anderson rides, where they flow and they carry so much speed. You know, Coop was so good at stopping on a dime, putting that K team in a rut, turning around a tough block and shooting out the other way with little or no hesitation. I don't think that type of technique is gonna float nowadays in 2023. And I was shocked at coming into last season, coming into 2022. All the media guys were all hyped on Webb. Webb's the favorite, man. He's gonna win this thing. And I'm like, man, I didn't see it. I didn't see it at all. And I was shocked that he came out at Anaheim 1 and got a second. You know, looking at his results, they weren't horrible. You know,
I think he was too.
He went 2-3-2 at round 7, 8, and 9 at Minnesota, Dallas, and Daytona. That race at Daytona was awesome until Eli broke him at the end of it, which had to kind of weigh on him. But he also did that race at Detroit where all of a sudden he decided he's going to triple a rhythm section out of complete brain fart. He had no intention to jump in it. I think he got confused where he was at. It's little things like that. I don't think he's going to get over for this year. He's got a taste of the good life. He doesn't like that bike. He has no snarl in him at all. And I agree. I don't see him running anywhere, but you know, he can run top 5. He might have a podium here, but I don't consistently see him running that speed of the top 3 guys that we picked with Eli, Chase, and Jason. And if it's a matter of him going to another team, I don't see him going to another team. I think once he's done with KTM, I don't think he'll ride the outdoors this summer. He had no interest. He obviously was having a good time racing locals and off-road racing. He was probably the most highest paid local racer in the country ever. I like to see what Cooper's doing well, but it also takes a lot of energy, a lot of mental strength for what he's done already and accomplished. Once you kind of break that mold, getting away from it, put on a little pounds, it's hard to come back. So I don't see him coming back up to that speed again that he's had in the past. I do not count Cooper as a title contender for 2023.
No, I don't either. What do you think, Checkers?
Yeah, I don't have him on my list of of title contenders. And spoiler alert, I don't have him in my top 5 at the end of the season. And I do think he races all the races, but I don't think any of them are very good.
No, I think his high watermark for the year is going to be a top 5 finish. And honestly, like same could be said for a guy who I believe if he didn't win a race last year, 4th in points, Marvin Musquin. Like this is his last year, right? Like I feel like we've been saying this for the last 3 years or so of Marv sort of like being on KTM, still being legit and relevant, but not really a race winning contender, not really a championship contender. Like he's like, I really don't know what to make of Marvin Musquin. Like he sometimes shows flashes and all of a sudden he's up front and he's actually a half decent starter. But for the most part, like there's a lot of also some uninspiring rides from Marv where he just goes completely like he is like the quietest 5th place you've ever seen.
Well, last year from round 10 till round 17, Salt Lake City, he ran a 4th, a 3rd, a 3rd, a 1st, a 10th, 2 more 3rds, and a 5th. So, I mean, he rounded off with 5 podiums out of the last 7 races, which, you know, again, you would not think that. You don't look back and go, man, Marv was kicking ass at the end of the year. He does it so quietly.
He also got moved up 1 because Barsha messed with Mookie and lost points.
Sure. Yep. So it's a matter of him. I think the brand likes him. I think Roger likes him. He does do good. He's very popular. His interviews are great. Obviously, you're never going to keep Marvin quiet. He'll tell you exactly
he follows
what's
the
on
diet,
his mind, which I think is a bonus for KTM. And obviously, he was the number 1 rider on the team in Supercross last season. So obviously, it's great that he got a renewal. But you would think that this would be his last year, and you know, eventually you're going to hit that high water mark of like, well, I'm getting older. I'm not going to want to take those chances and stuff. So is he a race winner? I don't see one unless everything works out perfectly like it did last year. Will he run top 5? I think he's capable of running top 5. But again, I think he's probably more of a 4 to 7 spot. And we'll do it quietly and win some heat races and still jump to the whoops when need be, because he's got that dialed in. But when the track is, it doesn't break down as much, and those guys are hauling ass 4th gear across the tops of them. Those type of races, I think Marv will struggle in.
What do you think, Jack?
You're wrong. You're totally wrong. To 4 to 7, he had 6 podiums last year. Like,
no, I agree.
The dude won a race. He at the end of the year, he was better. He's clearly the one that has figured out how to ride that motorcycle. He's going to suck in the whoops no matter what and jump through them anyways. So that's not going to hold him back at all. Like, I think he comes back to KTM because he's going to be their top rider in Supercross. They're going to get rid of both Webb and AP, so there'll be a spot there at least as a number 2 rider. He's having fun. He has a ton of natural talent. Like, I don't know. People are knocking on the guy, but he's having fun and he wants to be there. And I think that's the key. He wants to be there. He's putting in great results. Why wouldn't he continue? He's racing the same guys. Like, he's not just going to take a step backwards all of a sudden. I don't think. Like, I can't discredit 6 podiums. That's a lot of podiums for a guy that doesn't get talked about very much. There's no question in my mind he's the top KTM rider at the end of the series.
I would say that as well. Like, if not, like for sure, top KTM rider, could be the top Austrian brand rider, honestly, depending on how some other guys shake out. But yeah, he'll be up there. He'll be up there consistently. It just seems like he's sort of like he's like a high end version of like a Justin Brayton, where he's just like he's welcome on that team for as long as he wants. Him and Roger both speak French. They can like enjoy each other's company, and he has his smoking hot wife, and everything else is awesome. But as far as like championship contender, I think he's like maybe like the quote unquote best of the rest. Can we label him as that?
Yeah, I don't even know if I put him. He should be in the mix for that conversation. I don't necessarily put him that high, but probably should based on the results that he had. But really, he was basically 5th in the series last year. But if you look at the second half of it and broke it down, yeah, he would probably be right in that mix of the best of the rest. But he would be battling for the best of the rest. But I think there's a couple guys on a different Austrian brand that we're going to talk about that maybe will battle for that spot.
and there are a lot of Austrian brands. Let's go from Marvin Musquin to maybe the polar opposite, who got 5th last year in the points due to him just doing Barsha things in getting into it with Malcolm Stewart, the lone gas combatant. Like Justin Barsha is Justin Barsha. Justin Barsha is going to get good starts. Justin Barsha is going to stick his nose probably where it doesn't belong. Justin Barsha is going to have some beef with someone throughout the season. It'll probably be either Malcolm Stewart, Jason Anderson, or very well could be Christian Craig. Like it really depends on who he decides to what flavor he wants for that particular day. Czech, what are your thoughts on Justin Barsha? Has he changed his stripes in any way, or are we just going to get the same crazy fast, maybe ill-advised passes every once in a while? Justin Barsha, who generates a lot of entertainment every single weekend.
I sure hope he doesn't change his stripes, because dang, it's entertaining. I absolutely love to hate Justin Barsha. And the reason I say that, I'm not a fan. I don't like the way that he is off the track necessarily when it comes to running into people. The whole, what? I didn't do anything. It's like, no, you did. You cut across the inside of the corner and completely T-boned the guy. So just say I completely cut across the corner and T-boned the guy, and I'll tell you, good job, because I think it's awesome. I think it's entertaining. I live for it. I love it. I absolutely love controversy. I love having a villain in the sport. I don't necessarily think I would agree with the crazy fast. I mean, he's crazy fast compared to a normal human, but in the field, like flat out speed has really never been Barsha's thing all the way through. Even when he was winning 250 titles, it wasn't on flat out speed. It was good starts, always delivering. It wasn't just this like blazing speed, but he had 6 podiums, it's okay last year. The big thing is he had 11 top 5 finishes. That is consistently why he was did so well in points. But here's the thing that he has to overcome now. The gas is onto that new chassis that we've been hammering home. And gosh, I hope you don't ever want KTM as an advertiser, because we're hammering home on that motorcycle does not work. But he has to adapt to that now. He has to go onto that bike because he was not on it last year. The gas was the old version. That means he's a year behind developing settings and stuff for himself. Does he get their development? Yes, absolutely. But he's behind. So I don't think that things get any better for Justin Barsha. The question will be, do they get worse or do they stay the same?
Well, I agree with you on that. I mean, I love the way he rides. I mean, I don't like it for the other riders, but that last round at Salt Lake City when he parked Malcolm, and everybody's like, man, he should be banned from racing. That race was one of the most exciting races I've watched in forever. And those people in those grandstands who were booing as loud as they possibly could every single lap will never forget ever being at that race. I mean, that was just to sit at home on my couch was ridiculous and insane to watch. To be there live, I couldn't imagine it. I mean, it was, that building had to be shaking. But nothing better than Chris and Beat sitting down with Justin at A1 and them talking. And I really don't want to be known as Bam Bam anymore. I'm not that guy. Well, that lasted about 14 days. He opened with 2 podiums with Anaheim and Oakland. And then I think the shit show started at San Diego. He started putting people on the ground. And I think that's just the way he is. I don't think he means to kill you. I don't think he means to harm you. He is just one of the best assassins in the sports that's ever been. It's a skill set to knock someone down and not take yourself out in the process. I've posted that on message boards and social media, and people laugh at me. It takes nothing to throw your bike at some guy. Trust me, I've knocked a lot of people down in my career. It's a skill. You know how to hit someone in the spot, in the right speed, in the right spot, and it is not easy to not take yourself out. I always joke at it. If you want to be an aggressive rider, you better not end up in a pile with the 2 of you. And if you do, you better get up first. But Barsha is entertainment. I love nothing more. Everything Checker said, I, again, 100% agree with, because we always laugh about it, is when someone comes up behind him, even Eli, even the best, Anderson, they shit their pants. They're like, oh, I've gotten to this guy. Like, I got to get around him in the safest possible manner. And when I do get by him, I got to get away 2-3 bike lengths on him immediately. I got to get away because he's going to kill me if not. And to see those guys as fast and as talented and as skilled as they are, pull that panic button. You see him, man. Like, man, I'm coming. And it is just, it's incredible. And it's great entertainment. As a fan, I couldn't imagine it'd be better. But I think Checkers also nailed it. Is he hasn't really showed necessarily blinding speed. He's a great starter, and he's solid every lap. I don't think he makes big mistakes. I don't think he puts in big heaters. And, you know, with 17 top 10s, his worst finish was a 9th and 2 7ths. That's a pretty damn solid year. You know, if he can just kind of avoid some of the carnage, which we all know he's probably not going to do, I think he's going to have another solid year, and hopefully he gels with that bike and he keeps us entertained.
Well, he creates a lot of the carnage, and it's also a skill set, though, in my opinion, to be able to smash as many guys as he's smashed, and no angle in a corner is off limits for him. But he doesn't get taken out often. And
yeah, that's it.
You know, like, that's a skill, because you know all those guys want to get payback on him. And so either he has them psyched out so much that they don't want to touch him because they don't want to start a war, which I don't think is the case, or he just knows how to be defensive when he needs to be defensive to not get put on the ground and not give them a chance to pay them back. So he's been top 5 in the series the last 3 years. I think it's going to be pretty tough for him not to be top 5 again, just because of that crazy consistency of he's going to be in the top 10. And a lot of times he's going to be right at 4th, 5th place is going to be a place that he's going to find himself in.
The only thing I disagree with you is I do think front riders are fearful of him. I don't think they want to start a war with him. Eli doesn't want to start a war with him. Anderson probably doesn't care. But if you're smart, the best thing you do is get around him clean and get away from him. You know, if you do start dive bombing him and you start the war, Barsha will be the one that finishes it, and that he could be the one to fuck up your whole championship series.
I could definitely see. I could definitely see them not. Anderson, I think he will do everything he can to avoid having that issue and having a run in with him, because he has to have learned. I think he's smart enough to do that. So yeah, I think that'll change.
I think for the most part, people are definitely scared of, like, not only doing something on purpose to Justin Barsha, but even just when you're making a pass, you inadvertently get in his face, because he's going to take that as immediately as red alarm, I'm under attack, and will just ready, fire, aim at anybody. And I seriously, I don't envy anybody who's having to pass him on a regular basis, and he's a good starter on top of that. So that usually means if the guys like Dylan Ferrandis, who don't get good starts, that's who they have to deal with every single weekend in order on their way to a top 5 finish. So that's going to be very difficult for guys like another guy that we're about to talk about, which is Christian Craig. First of all, is he a rookie? Secondly, the guy's got speed. He's silky smooth on the motorcycle. But as we said, in the 4th or 5th guy now, dealing with a chassis setup that might not be as tuned in as it needs to be successful in Supercross. Few snippets on Instagram show me that he's looking pretty comfortable, but this is also the first time that Christian Craig is riding an Austrian motorcycle in his professional career. That raises some questions for me. I know you guys basically have a table set for 2. The 2 of you guys are going to argue for the next 25-30 minutes. So with that, I just want to ring the bell, and I'll let you guys can touch gloves and come out swinging.
Have at it, leader of the Christian Craig fan club.
Checkers
he opens his shirt and he's got number 28 underneath.
We've been arguing about Craig for a couple of years now. You know, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Christian's. I mean, I like the guy. I like the way he rides a motorcycle. But Checkers has made it very adamant and very clear that he never felt that Craig has been, just riding a 250, kind of milking the ride. And he's obviously had some off years and has always kind of never been very clutch, has made some mistakes. But Checkers was very insistent that he would never get a factory 450 ride. And I said, well, you're full of shit. He's going to get a factory 450 ride. He's earned it. He's already had a factory ride, which I guess was a fill-in on a 450, but he did have a 450 ride with factory Honda. And then finally this year, he put it together on that 250 and just ripped. Of course, Checkers says the only guy he beat in the city class was
Vince.
What's his name?
Vince Friese.
Vince Friese. Yeah, he says, so what kind of title is that? He beat Vince Friese, some 30-year-old guy, old guy. I go, well, Craig's 30 years old too. So To see him on that 450 KTM or Husky, I think it will be a big change. But 2018, he rode 9 rounds for factory Honda, part-time East with Geico, or the region 2D class. He had 4 top 5s, 2 top 10s out of 6 rounds. I think he's got nothing but better with age, smarter, bigger, stronger. Yeah, I think I got him to run a top 5 consistently this next season. I think if he would have rode a star Yamaha 450, I think he'd be a podium guy. But learn that new bike. He's fast in the whoops like Malcolm. Malcolm was not as fast in the whoops on that Husky as he's been in the past. So hopefully Craig can adapt. But again, I got him running top 5 most of the year. It's all you, Craig, or Checkers.
Well, first of all, it was a full-time factory 450 ride in Supercross that I didn't think he would ever get. And honestly, I didn't think he was ever going to win a 250 title. And for a lot of years, I looked really, really smart, because it goes all the way back to when he had those great results in Supercross on a 450 that he's been saying, I want to ride a 450. I want to ride a 450. Give me a factory bike and I will move out of the 250 class onto a 450. And clearly all those team managers didn't think he was ready. He has definitely improved with last year. He was much better mentally last year, much more consistent. He made a step up. He's still going into the 450 class. And yes, you can say he had those great results. That was a very, very depleted field. He's had great 450 results outdoors. Well, guess what? When outdoors started, over 50% of the top 10 in Supercross weren't on the starting line. So of course that automatically moves you up in the results. Am I taking away the fact that he has podiums and that he's done well? No, he can have those results. Those count. But when you're looking at it as a whole, going into this Supercross season, those guys are all on the starting line with him. And now he has to beat all those guys. And he's, in my opinion, a rookie, but I don't think we see the rookie mistakes, because he's super good on a 450, super smooth, and he's older. He's more mature. So I do think he avoids those mental mistakes. He also has Alden Baker in his corner, which that very well could be the missing piece. Like, he was mentally better last year, 100% hands down. He has grown in that department, and Alden could make him even mentally stronger yet. And in that case, he's going to be pretty tough to beat, because he's going to be really smooth. He's not going to make those big mistakes. He looks amazing on a bike. I mean, it's tough to find anyone that's more fun to watch than Christian Craig. I do think that we'll see a little bit difference in the whoops. He'll still be good, but I don't think it'll be like the 250 class where he's just blowing by guys. One, because everybody's good in the whoops, but also they're a lot tougher on a 450. It's a lot harder to set the bike up. It's a lot more weight. It moves around a lot more. And also they're a lot more hammered. They've already gone through the 250 main event when that 450 main starts. They're right. More cupped, they're sharper, they're deeper, they're harder. Which a lot of times makes them into, even for the best guys at blitzing whoops, they have to learn to jump them. And I don't recall ever really seeing Craig jump whoops, which there's times it's inevitable. It's slower to blitz them. Even Malcolm has to jump whoops sometimes, and he's great at getting on top of them.
He begrudgingly
at the end of the day,
jumps them. He's like, against his will, he jumps the whoops.
Right, and he's got pretty good at it. So I just think that the field's really deep, and to say that Craig's going to just jump in there and be a top 5 guy against dudes that have won 450 Supercrosses and whatnot. And I'm not saying he can't get some top 5s, but definitely, and I don't see him in the top 5 in half of the races. I don't see him doing what Barsha did and getting 11 top 5 finishes. So that puts him at least outside the top 5 in points. And if you start going down the names and listing guys off, trying to figure out where he sits in, I think he's more at the end of the series. If everyone were to stay healthy, which they probably won't, because unfortunately injuries happen, I think he's more towards the tail end of the top 10, if he's even in it. You cannot discredit guys like Joey Savacci. I'll throw his name. He's going on a privateer bike. He's pretty dang good dirt bike rider. He's pretty talented. I don't think that you can just say Christian Craig is going to be so much better than him, no matter what, hands down.
Absolutely. And you know what? The reality is we're going to end up talking about 16 guys on factory equipment, full-blown manufacturer-backed factory riders. And there's two things that I think kind of like favor Christian Craig rolling into this season. But one of them could also sort of hurt him. And the fact that he's the only one on either one of these teams on the Austrian brands that's actually new to that motorcycle. Every single one of those guys has ridden this bike in prior condition, which means none of them have, like, all those other guys had like a preconceived notion of how that bike handled prior to this new chassis. So he's coming into this with an open mind. And aside from Malcolm Stewart, who I don't think has hit whoops the same way ever since he broke his femur at Phoenix, I don't think there's anyone on the planet that hits whoops as well as Christian Craig does. So he may very well gel with this motorcycle and perform extremely well. And on top of that, I think that you add the style and consistency of Christian Craig with the Eldon Baker program, which he's new to. He's not going to be like completely burnt out by this thing right off the hop. That's something that might be able to be something that sort of like pushes him up a little bit of a notch. But then again, he might still struggle with that. And the fact that this is, although he's not really a rookie in this series, in a lot of ways he still is. And he's on a brand new motorcycle, which, like, that's the first thing a lot of guys talk about. Brand new bike for me this year, this, that, and everything. Honestly, I think you're right, Checkers. I put him somewhere around the 6, 7, 8 range rather than say like a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th.
I think that the biggest thing goes back to 17 rounds. 17 rounds is a grind. It's gnarly. And, anybody who haphazardly suggests that the TVD class needs to run a full 17 rounds is an idiot, for one, because
it'd be a triage unit.
Yeah, they can't even survive 8 rounds, 9 rounds. These are the world's best, and finishing 17 rounds, it's gnarly. And I think that is going to be the biggest change for Craig. He did run 24 motos this past summer on a 450, so he's used to that. And outdoors is gnarly as well. But 17 rounds of Supercross, 20 minutes plus 1 lap, those are some 24, 25, 26 lap main events. When that track is a landmine field, that I think is going to be his biggest challenge. Speed, smoothness. I think he's over the mental hump. I really believe that. I think the Alden thing's to be great. It's just going to be that 17 race grind that I think could get to Christian more than anything. Nagging injuries, anything that comes up, a practice crash at home, or in Florida. But I think we're going to see. I think every year somebody kind of comes out of nowhere and puts up results. I don't see it with Marvin. I don't see it with Webb. I don't see it with Barsha. Malcolm's already on the cusp of greatness. We've seen some good things from him. I think Christian's the guy that we're going to see that's going to kind of surprise everybody, run up front, find a good rhythm. It's just a matter if he can do it for 17 rounds. That's my only question. But I see him he's going to get good starts. He's going to hold shot main events. He's going to get up right away. He's going to figure out the pace of these guys. He's not going to be like Ferrandis back in 12th, trying to get to that pace. He's going to know right away how comfortable I am running this pace. Plus, he's been riding already with a ton of guys, that star guys. We watched those Instagram clips. There's 15 guys out there. They got a damn main running already. So I think I'm looking for good things out of Christian. So that's something, like I said, Craig, Checkers I've been arguing about. But you guys both made some good points. And again, 17 rounds will be tough, but I think we see him up in the 4th or 6th place range with some 7th and 8th, because it's his first full year and there's a lot of talent. So I look for him to be one of the top guys in that next pack, like we talked about.
I think it's super important, though, to factor in also that racecraft has really not been his strong point his entire career. And the reason he won his title last year is because he was head and shoulders faster than everybody. He was blazing fast. And he had a whoop section where he knew he could blow by 3 guys all at once. And now he's got to adapt to, there's 10 dudes in that field that can go just as fast as him or faster. And he's going to have racecraft. How is he going to react when Barsha's cutting across the inside to smash him in a corner? I don't know if he has that mental strength. He
survived Freezy doing so. So what's the difference?
Well, technically he didn't.
Neither one of them survived.
Forward finish. And that's the racecraft that I'm talking about. You can't go around the outside, try to pass Justin Barsha on the outside, or he's going to come in like a missile, just like Nitz did. You cannot make those decisions. He has to be a better racer. And as far as the grind of 17 rounds, I mean, we all know that Christian Craig's proven to be a real grinder and really work hard and that side of things. So I'm overplaying it a little bit on giving him a hard time, but I don't see him being near the front of the top 10. I don't. I think there might be some races that he does pretty well, but I would say if he were to get 6 top 5 finishes, that's great. I think slotting him in front of guys like Marvin Muskin, who won a race last year, Barsha, who constantly is in the top 10 and sometimes in the top 5, is absolutely ridiculous. So I think you have the top 3 that I think we all agree on are ahead of him. And so then you add in those 2 guys, and all of a sudden he's already at least outside the top 5.
Yeah. And once again, Denny Stephenson proving that it's okay to be wrong sometimes.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. I like sticking to my points, and sometimes I've been known to be wrong, and that's okay. But you got to have at least an opinion every once in a while. And the fact that Chex is staked a flag on the other side of this whole opinion, it just pushes us both in opposite directions of each other. So it works out perfect for us.
Yeah, it might be brutal because it's literally just to prove a point that Denny's wrong. But everything I'm saying is true. It's all facts. So.
So
yeah, we do take turns saying that.
Let's round out the Austrian brands with Malcolm Stewart. Last year, I think he hit his ceiling. I honestly do. I think that we saw the best Malcolm Stewart that we're gonna see. I don't know that we're gonna see if he makes that next step, color me surprised. Because I think he has heat race speed. I think he has qualifying speed. But I don't see him having much for those top 3 guys that we've talked about, the Eli Tomac's, the Chase Sextons, the Jason Andersons of the world. I'm wrong. I don't know. Like Checkers, I think I'll let you take the floor on this one, because clearly I'm just like maybe I'm smoking something over here. But yeah, like I don't like in order for Malcolm Stewart to improve, he would have to start mixing it up with those 3 guys every single weekend. Like, and that's that next step.
There's a guy that's gone really, really fast on a motorcycle from Haines City, Florida, named James Stewart.
I've heard of him.
Knows Malcolm pretty well, and he's predicted that Malcolm will take a very big jump up. I'm hearing that Malcolm is hands down the fastest guy at the Baker's factory, day in and day out. He's on year 2 of the Baker program. His biggest issue previously was not being in shape. He's always had some talent and speed. He's got racecraft. He's gotten there's not a more consistent guy out there than Malcolm Stewart. He's in the top 10 week in and week out every single time. 13 top 5s last year. He is dang near won races. He's going to win his first race, no problem this year. He's probably going to win multiples. I think that's a step up. I think he's going to be on the podium a lot. He's going to give those guys fits. Do I see him beating them at the end of a championship? I don't see him quite being there, but he's going to be in that mix a lot more often. And he's going to be in the top 5 almost every week again. He's been building slowly into it. You know, if you look back when his rise started, all the way back to his year on Moto Concepts and then moving on to the Yamahas, instead of being the fast guy that crashed, he was, I'm going to be in the top 10 every single time. Well, last year he was in the top 5 pretty much every single time. This time he's going to be in the top 5 even more and on the podium more often. Malcolm Stewart will be the next best guy, hands down, next year, without a doubt, and will win his first race.
Boom. Coming in hot with some predictions. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty solid assessment. You know, I mean, I think Malcolm did get tired last year. I think, you know, there were rounds where he could have kept going. I think, you know, the last 5 minutes, I think he struggled a little bit, maybe the last 4 minutes, 4 or 5 laps. I think, again, he'll be stronger than he was last year. I think he'll be more in tune with that bike. His whoop speed is definitely not as fast, but he's faster everywhere else. His corner speed has been his flowing speed. You know, you do see a little bit of James in there, is the way he transitions from a jump into a corner and not losing any type of momentum and keeping his feet on the pegs. You know, he's fun to watch. He's big, strong kid. But again, he's got to stay away from carnage with riders like Jason. You know, I think if he wants to be a contender in every round, I think his worst rounds, which last year were an 8th and a 9th, which was his 2 worst races, which were Daytona. Obviously, we knew that was 2 big instances. Those 2 wouldn't leave each other alone. And then 9th at St. Louis, which I think those 2 got into it as well. If he wants to be considered a championship contender, that he's got to squash those emotions, focus on what the big goal is. And I think we'll see a couple wins out of him. I don't think we're going to consistently see him beating Eli or Jason, but or Chase, but he could be possibly, if not, no doubt, the top next level, 4th place guy. I think Checkers is pretty solid in this one, and he's very passionate about it, so I'll let him have this one.
Well, if you're hearing that he's one of the fastest guys at the Bacus factory, I have to go along with that and saying that like the KTM guys always have somebody up front. And if they can get that thing figured out where he's consistently 3rd, 4th, 5th, just on a consistency basis, if he's able to stay there consistently, yeah, he's going to be 4th in points. And honestly, that actually would be a step backwards from last year, but that's assuming that the Chase Sexton takes a step ahead of him.
Yeah, those 13 top 5 finishes, 13 top 5s, like Checkers mentioned. He's got 3 second-place finishes. He's on the cusp, of getting that first win. And
where's that
numbers don't lie. What?
Where's that pit board for me? I think I might have. Yeah, like I'm gonna maybe wear that. Wear that for the rest of this podcast. Yeah, but seriously, yeah, I've been swayed. Is it crazy to think that Malcolm Stewart's the best Austrian rider for the year?
I don't even think it's a question. And we talk about, he's the fastest at the Baker's factory, but who he's with, an uninspired Webb, like we were just talking about. Barsha's not there. Marvin's not there. So he's faster than Christian Craig.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking the same thing when you busted out. That was a big deal. I'm like, well, who's down there? What is Villopoto down there? Yeah, he's beating a bunch of 250 guys, and he should be the fastest.
I mean, in a typical year, that is a big deal. But if you look at it that way, it's not. But I have heard like I said, he's riding great, and if James Stewart says he's going to be better, James is pretty analytical, and honestly, like I listened to a lot of his previous stuff last year. He was pretty hard on Malcolm. Like he's pretty realistic about it. Maybe kind of like I was with Anderson, of harder on them because you want them to do well and you want to try to be unbiased. So
like me and Eli, he's going to be better. Expect bigger things.
He's going to be better. And
your son.
I don't know, but James did pick Dungey to win the outdoors last year, so he does make mistakes.
Yes, that might have been maybe that's not James's best take, but honestly, I love James Stewart's analysis of the sport. He sees stuff that honestly, like he's got an eye for the sport that I would say like better than 99% of eyeballs on the sport, period. The guy, he sees what bikes are doing. He notices changes to bikes that are happening. He sees where guys are struggling in sections, when they're feeling it, when they're not feeling it. He's not just looking at body language on the bike. I think James Stewart, from an analytical standpoint, is maybe as good as they come right now.
We talked about, the variety of guest commentators for the outdoors. We were all very critical of each one of them and which ones we liked, which ones we didn't. And obviously James was outstanding. He was not afraid to say what he wanted to say. He wasn't being politically correct. I think Ricky sometimes doesn't want to say too much and drag someone down, but James has no problem throwing a little jab here and there. He does it respectfully. He is James. He has all the right. I think at the end of the last round, I think he was kind of feeling his oats, and I think he was kind of popping off a little bit too much at that point. I think he was kind of stepping over and not insulting, but I think he just was having a little bit too much fun. It kind of lost a little bit analytical, but the races he did were awesome. And I haven't had a chance to listen to the latest Bubba's World with Ricky, but I'm definitely looking forward to hearing those two tell stories, because man, watching those two race back in the day was some of the greatest racing that I'd ever witnessed in my life. So I look forward to their storytelling, and we'll see what happens.
Check.
That's really all I have. I mean, I brought all the passion in the world out for Malcolm Stewart. So I said my piece. I dropped my mic. I'm good on Malcolm.
All right. Well, yeah, I think we're in for some entertainment when it comes to Malcolm Stewart, but I think it's time to switch things over to German chocolate himself. The man who rode them all, except for the Kawasaki's. Those just got built up. Your average fan would just only die to have Pro Circuit build two bikes for you that look so sick. And then to never swing a leg over either one of them is just amazing. Ken Roxon is back on yellow for the first time since the end of 2016. He grew up on yellow. He won his last championship on Suzuki. And like he said, basically rode every manufacturer aside from the Austrian brands. He ended up on Suzuki's. I can tell you guys what I expect to see out of Ken Roczen this year. But honestly, I'm gonna go to Debo first. I'm gonna go to Debo first on this one because I think he's gonna really like dig into the negativity that can be brought through this particular topic.
Well, I mean, let's start first. Has any offseason been dominated by one rider who hadn't?
Everyone's flying under the radar compared to Ken Roczen. There is no there's Ken Roczen. There's a 50 feet of shit, and there's everybody else.
It's incredible the way he manipulated the media, manipulated the fans, was able to just keep everyone in complete interest, myself included, obviously. The media, the riders, everybody. I guarantee other riders are just looking at it and laughing. Like what is going on here? But for a rider who, people like to, I'm a Ken fan. Been a Ken fan. When people jump on the fact, get him out of here. He's done. He's washed up. Well, let me remind you, he won A1 last year and he won Lakewood, Colorado. How many other guys won 2 nationals or 2 Supercross and national? So in that retrospect, I'm a Ken fan. I thought what he did at Paris, I thought he looked awesome. He got that bike dialed in. He was playing it through the whoops, which then again was brought to me by Checkers. The whoops were round. The races were short. Of course, Ken's going to look good over there in those short type of races. Fact taken. And I said he would no way in hell end up on a 2018 RMZ Suzuki. Well, clearly I was wrong. Do I think he can win on this bike? Absolutely not. For one reason. I don't doubt the HEP team. I think they're a great team. I think they do great with what they've done. I think his mechanic, Travis Sewells, is a good friend of mine. I think he's a fantastic and amazing mechanic.
Good
but
guy.
If he does win on this motorcycle, I'm going to go back to say, again, we'll dial it back. When people thought that Ryan Dungey was going to come in and start winning races, running podium, I have nothing against Ryan Dungey. I think Ryan Dungey is awesome. I think the summer he had last summer was phenomenal. We made the racing great. But for him to think that he was going to come in and beat the guys who've been racing outdoors for the last 6 years is an insult to Tomac. It's an insult to Anderson. Insult to anybody who's been racing and busting their ass to think that some guy's going to come off the couch and come in and beat them.
I felt insulted.
It just wasn't. I was insulted. And I don't even race. So for my concern now is that if you think that a rider's going to jump on a 5-year-old bike with 5-year-old technology, 5-year-old chassis, and beat them with bolt-on parts, then I think that every manufacturer should stop building new bikes. They should just stop, save money, sell the 2023 till the 2028, and just go race. Save some money, save some time. Makes no idea to me, or makes no sense that he can jump on this bike, old bike, and make it go fast and go win races against guys who have on motorcycles that have tons of more development. Star, Factories Kawasaki, Factory Honda, KTM, all these brands. It just blows my mind to think that he's just going to step in and beat these guys no matter what they do. They're all like, oh, he looks great in practice. Again, Kyle Chisholm set up his bike. No offense to Kyle Chisholm, great rider, great career. But you tell me the last time he's ever gone Ken Roczen speed, he's ever gone Mach 1 through a set of whoops like Eli and Kenny and those guys do. And you're telling me he's the one setting up his bike? I don't see it. And if Ken's comfortable on the bike practicing, well, everybody feels great practicing. Wait till you got to go Mach 1, lap 15. The track does look like a war zone. His practice track, I guarantee he has not ridden that bike on anything that looks like that. End of the day, I don't see him running top 3. I see him maybe running a couple of fifths. He's going to get good starts. That bike might put him on the ground a couple of times. And if Denny hits the ground, his confidence is gone. I'm not even sure he'll finish this season. That's my take on Ken and the yellow bike. Not the team, not his mechanic, just old equipment. And I know other people disagree with me. And I've staked my flag in the ground again. And for all I know, Ken will probably go out and win and prove me wrong, but I don't see it for 2023.
What's up, Check?
Oh,
Checkers.
Boy, where to start? For all these guys, I made notes and pulled stats and everything else. I wrote nothing for Ken Roczen because I think you throw the book out. That it doesn't matter what he's done in the past because this is a completely new situation. It's such a big change. It's way different. I go back to Denny said he won A1 and he won Lakewood. Well, he won A1. Chase Sexton won Lakewood. He just happened to fall over with a huge lead on the last lap.
Chase won theoretically A1 and Lakewood.
Both those races.
So really, Kenny hasn't won in a year, and he was on a factory Honda. The difference between a factory team and a privateer team is what? Unobtainium support from Japan. Well, in that case, they might be the elite Suzuki team, and they might get bikes from Suzuki, and they might get the title that they're the factory Suzuki team, but they're not running factory Suzuki engines. They're running aftermarket stuff. They're adding bolt-ons, and we all talk about it's an advantage to be on a factory team. They have a great crew, as Denny said. They have factory suspension. They have that going for them. And then you look at when a guy breaks up with a chick and then he starts dating a new one, you notice that they talk about, well, my ex, I hated all these things that my ex did, and this new chick doesn't do those things and does them better. Well, Ken hated his bike in the whoops. The new bike's going through the whoops great, at least on a fresh groomed practice track. But what he's forgetting about is there was a lot of things that Honda did super well. And maybe this motorcycle is not going to do those things quite so well. There's no data from a factory as far as a rider at his level for him to rely on. Well, I guess there is, because it hasn't changed for so long. But
yeah, he's that rider.
Where you're going to run into the problems is going from round to round. I think you lose the consistency, the ability to fix the problem throughout the night, not being on a more established program. Here's the deal. The HEP Suzuki team is doing an amazing job growing and improving. It wasn't that long ago that they were happy to have riders just making main events. And now they just signed Ken Roczen, who is probably the most popular rider in the sport still. So congratulations to them. That's awesome. I just think that it's going to be very, very tough for them because they're going to grow. They're going to learn. They're not ready yet because they haven't done it. And the only way you get there, you get thrown to the wolves and you have to figure it out. So it's old technology without a real factory program and factory support is going to be very tough. So it's a very, very good privateer team. That's what they're working with, at least for this year, until if Suzuki decides to kick it in the butt and actually start developing again on their side in Japan and giving them some advantage. But I don't think Kenny's around long enough to see that. So to think that Ken Roczen comes in and does anything like what he did on a factory Honda, I think is ludicrous. Can he have some good races? Probably. One thing that probably holds true, he'll start the season better than he'll finish it. He's a great start of the series guy. But honestly, if you look at last year, I know I threw the book out, so I can't look it up. But other than that win, it wasn't really awesome ever. Like, he wasn't even a podium guy a lot of the time.
No, he went first, 13th, 7th, 13th, 5th, 11th, 8th, 13th, and 7th.
So he had one win
and two top fives.
So for him to match those results, that wouldn't surprise me at all. There's no way that he's in my title contender fight. It's just not there. Is he an extremely talented racer? Yes. Could he come out at Anaheim 1 and put the bike on the podium because he starts the season so well? Yeah, I could see that. I could also see him running around in 11th place.
Yeah, I think you guys both hit the nail on the head and make a lot of great points. I think what gets forgotten a little bit is obviously Ken had a lot of success on the Suzuki, but also remember that at one point during the 2016 outdoor season, he had stock triple clamps on that bike. He had gone back to the smaller diameter forks outdoors, which you really don't see all that often. He struggled with the bike in Supercross, and anytime that you go from having like a factory HRC Honda is in my opinion still, if not the top, they're the top, if not like 1A of the top teams that you want to be on as far as a 450 is considered. I think they have the most amount of resources. I think they have the most amount of support. I think they have extremely smart people over there like Shane Drew and many other great chassis guys who are going to set things up. And not to say, and I'm not bagging on Hep Suzuki, but it also hasn't been that long since their riders consisted of Kyle Cunningham and Henry Miller. Like it's hard for me to think that Ken Roczen is going to go from factory HRC and take a step forward or improve himself, going from the program he was on last year to what he's on this year. And the fact that, like, honestly, in Supercross, the last 5 or 6 years, it hasn't really come down to what the bike's doing or how Ken's going fast. It's the fact that, like, 7 rounds into the series, he's dealing with some sort of physical ailment that doesn't even allow him to go as fast as he wants to go. So I think you guys are totally right. I don't think that Ken Roczen is going to be a better Ken Roczen in 2023. I think that if anything, he's going to be a little bit back of where he was. So if you take those results from last year, I don't think he gets a win. If he had 2 top 5s last year, maybe make that 1 top 5 this year, and the rest of the race is somewhere the back half of the top 10, maybe even outside the top 10. Like it can go that badly. And like you guys said, he's a top tier talent. He's won these races. He's led some of the fastest racers in the world, but I don't think 2023 is going to be the year he does it.
You know, you touched on a couple key points though too, is his ailments and getting tired. And one of the interviews I saw was, I need to rest, otherwise because my body gets depleted. It's constantly just getting drained. So then he rests, fills the tank up, then it's managing how much it drains. Well, guess what? He decided he was going to go become the world Supercross champion this offseason and go to Paris. And instead of resting, that tank's pretty empty. And then, okay, now I'm going to find a team to ride for. It's a team that's never had a guy at his level. So now he's trying to cram a bunch of testing and training into a super short amount of time.
He can't be at the peak of his fitness. He didn't have a boot camp. There's no way he had a boot camp. He was on flights the whole time.
And he spent the last 5 weeks developing. It took 5 weeks to develop a motorcycle to the way he wanted at that speed, that factory level. That's a big responsibility and that's a big call to do. That's tough, don't you think? I mean, the 5 weeks is not long enough to get a bike dialed in that you haven't raced in 10 years.
Yeah.
Nope, that's exactly what I was going to get to. That's part 2 of it. Now you're trying to cram a bunch of extra development, because it's not like he's going to a team that had a solid guy like Tomac there before. He's the first guy that they've had at that level on this program, and they're trying to cram that in there. So he has both of those things working against him already. It's a huge uphill battle, and he has a chip on his shoulder, and I don't see it going well at all. I hope that he at least completes all the races. I really do. And I hope that there's a couple bright spots. You know, I would love for him to get the Pipes Motorsports Group or HEP or whatever you want to call them their first podium. That would be awesome. But I mean, at least he get them their best finish ever. I think their best that they've had ever is 8th. So hopefully he can do better than that for them. Hopefully it doesn't end up in a complete disaster. You know, we've all seen a lot of times, you know, a top rider goes to a team like this and the rider ends up leaving midway through the year, you know, stuff like that happening, you know, not happy with the bike, or he quits completely, you know, like it can go really, really, really bad. And I mean, we also got to factor in, like, you're not dealing with the quality control of a factory program either. You know, it's difficult. There's a whole lot of factors that can go in there. To see Ken Roczen race 17 races and even be in the top 10 in all of them, I think would be a successful season for him.
You made a good example, or good, you know, when James went to JGR, you know, that was a big deal. The JGR had not really had anyone to that caliber. But again, JGR had unlimited resources. They could build anything back at this shop. You know, NASCAR, they can form anything, make anything that James wanted. They could not get that bike dialed in for James. And let's be honest, Ken, is James speed. He's James caliber, you know, champion motor race winner. So yeah, I think that's a big step for him. That was a great example. I was just agreeing with you, Chuck. So yeah, going to a satellite type team has already been proven once. It didn't work out, and that was with James. Very similar. I didn't even think of that until you mentioned that. So yeah, great example.
At the same point, Chad Reed started 22 Motorsports, was a privateer team in a sense that he wasn't getting factory Honda parts. It was doing well enough that Honda started giving him parts, and he dang near was going to win a Supercross title. So it can be done. It is possible, but the difference there is they were at least working with a modern technology motorcycle and not one that has stopped development 6 years ago.
Yeah, they had baseline.
Chad Reed is
baseline
also a little bit more of a Supercross. Like, I think Chad's bread and butter was always Supercross. Yes, he had an outdoor title in 2009, but his main skill set focused and shined brightest in Supercross, where I would say actually that Ken Roxon has had more consistent top finishes outdoors versus indoors. He has had Supercross wins indoors, but I would say if I was to weigh the scales a little bit, I think he's a better outdoor rider. And I'll put you this way. Nothing about Ken Roxon's. He's 1 year older. He's not as fit as he was last year. He's still dealing with ailments. He's on the heaviest bike in the class. He's going from factory HRC to a support team. Like, nothing about Ken Roxon's program and life has gotten better. Why would he be better?
Yeah, it is. And it's funny how people just don't even want to recognize that or just pass that by. That
and that's not a shot at
it's like
Dustin Pipes or anything.
Yeah, everybody's like, if Kenny's in a good mood, he's gonna do well. Well, I'm sure we talked about it. We covered that earlier. If you're feeling good and happy, you can do well. But to overcome those things you just said, great example again, it takes a lot. And he, I haven't weighed in on his illness. Yeah, I mean, just keeping Kenny healthy all year long, it'd be great. So I think Hep's got a lot of responsibility, a lot of work ahead of them, and I think Kenny does as well. And he's definitely made us dance and jump through hoops this last 3 months, and it's been entertaining. I just hope it goes better than I think it's going to go, because I agree. I don't think it's going to go very well.
Well, you're only as good as your last race. In his last race, he was the king of Paris, and he's the world Supercross champion. So
he is a world champion. He's
riding a wave of momentum into the series on his 2018 RMZ 450.
And another thing you said too about him flying over and doing the rounds. He was just recently, beginning this month, over there for the FIM awards banquet. So yeah. I mean, that's
with Shane McElrath, who's not racing this year, by the way.
Yeah, crazy. So for Ken to spend, it's a good, 18 to 20 hours on a plane to go over there to accept an award, get dressed up, fly another 20 hours back. So you gave up 3-4 days of testing right there and riding, and put yourself in if his immune system's down, he's on a plane. We all know that is jet lag. Coming back, recovering takes you at least a couple of days. So that was another example. I saw that he had went there for that, and I shook my head. I'm like,
it's okay. Kyle Chisholm was riding the bike. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it just.
And I like Kyle. I love Kyle.
Nothing against Kyle. Kyle is fantastic, but again, you're just asking a big responsibility for a team and group that's never had this type of pressure and expectations. I think expectations would probably be the best word.
In Ken Roxon's mind, what's a successful season for him? I mean, I can't believe that he thinks he's coming in as a title contender. Do you? Like, is it winning races? Is it being on the podium? Is it like, what's a successful season look like in his mind on the opposite side? Obviously, we're all pretty doom and gloom on it, but and then
I'm just trying to be real.
Successful season, like I don't know what they expect. Like, how high of expectations do they have? I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be a dang miracle if he wins a race on the thing.
Well, you said it earlier, Chex, when you were talking about guys who won a championship and then didn't win for a lot of years. Like the last time he stayed at the top step of a podium, he was on a Suzuki at the end of 2016. We're about to roll into the 2023 season. Like this would be unprecedented if a former champion in the 450 class was to rise back to being a 450 champion 6 years removed from a title. It's never been done.
On the same motorcycle.
Exactly.
I mean, at least there's lots of entertainment and the amount of memes and jokes and all of that. It's been entertaining, at least, if nothing else. So I appreciate that part of it. But I guess there's a lot to be seen, and he can definitely shut all the haters up by going out and putting the bike on the podium.
You certainly can. I think it's time for some predictions here, boys. I think we're both going to give all three of us are going to give our top 10.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, so I know that you guys are, I'm going to go first. I'm going to stab at this thing. Honestly, I think that you guys might be a little bit closer to being more correct than I will, especially honestly, it's probably also going to be that way with PulpMX Fantasy. Or you guys also had you guys have your own fantasy show that you guys run. Can you guys tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I have MotoX Dream 360, MXD360.com. Back in the day, good 10 years ago or so, or long ago than that, nearly early 2000s, I came up with a fantasy website, MotoXDream.com, and I brought it back a couple years ago. Salary-based league. We're giving away. We teamed up with Storm Lake Honda. Looks like we're going to be giving away a 110 pit bike for 2023 Supercross. You basically come in and you hire 250 guys and 450 guys for a $3.5 million salary. Each rider's salary is based off basically their points and their season, how they're doing. There's hot riders. You get a hot rider, gets in the top 10, you get a 10 extra bonus points. And it's just, just another way for us to compete, enjoy the sport. There's a lot of them out there. You worked with Pulp. I know Steve and everybody over there. And I'm always making up new games. We had retro games where we raced. We played a league with 86 and 06 riders, or 96 riders. So just a way for us to play games and keep paying attention. It's kind of like fantasy football, where we're not necessarily always rooting for the teams anymore. We're looking at the players. This way you can look deeper in the pack and be rooting for guys like Logan Carnell, Clausen, Oldenburg, Chisholm, guys like that who necessarily aren't going to be up at the top 5, but if they're on your team, you're going to you want them to do your best. So it's just another way for us to keep track of the game and the racing. It's fun.
Yeah, and in addition to all of the fantasy games that we play, we still didn't have enough going on. So we created a game called Supercross Survivor. And just last year, I moved it over to hosting it on airwheeliesonly.com. That's a real website. And basically, it's the easiest game in the world because you pick one rider every week. And that rider just simply has to get in the top 10. And as long as he gets in the top 10, then you get to stay in the game. But the catch is, and what makes it hard, is you can only use each rider one time. And once that you've used that rider, you can't use them the rest of the series. And it gets, it gets really challenging midway through the season when you start having to pick like a Justin Bogle to get a top 10. Or like last year, we picked Cade Gleason at one point. Like he got a top 10 and kept someone in the game. It gets extremely gnarly and extremely stressful. But as Denny can attest, you pick maybe Jason Anderson at Anaheim 1, and he has an off night and doesn't get top 10, and you're out in the first race.
I played this game twice, and I was out the first round both times.
And it becomes extremely frustrating. Ferrandis was one that got a lot of people last year so many times. You just got to catch guys on their on nights, and it goes until there's one person standing. And then the tiebreaker is you get the points for the rider you picked that night. So that's where the tiebreaker comes in for it. We've done it 2 years now, and it is a lot of fun. But honestly, at the end of last year, I ended up getting second in the thing. It was infuriating. At one of the races, I'm watching Bogle just literally riding around the track, not trying at all. And it was in the middle of the season, and luckily there was enough guys hurt and whatnot that he was able to pull it off for me and keep me in the game. But I think maybe it was in a heat race or something that he crashed. And I just remember he was rolling around and I was infuriated. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the end for me. It makes you very, very passionate about one rider on the night. So I'll be launching that probably tomorrow on, just stay tuned to airwheeliesonly.com or my social media. And we do a little buy-in, and then it's 100% payback for it. And it's, like I said, it's the easiest game in the world. You just got to pick one rider to get a top 10. How hard can it be?
I will be joining that website as soon as we hang up this call. I appreciate it, boys. And before we hang up this call, we need to talk a little bit about race tech as well. But let me give you my top 10. And honestly, I don't have the heart to leave this guy off the top 10, although when I probably add things up, he's probably not there, which is really sad. I'm going to go with the 94 of Ken Roczen in 10 spot, followed by the 9 of Adam Cianciarulo. In 8th, we have Christian Craig. Just ahead of him in 7th, we have Cooper Webb. Then Marvin Muscan, Justin Barsha. Then you've got the 27 of Malcolm Stewart, Mookie, Fever, catch it. And then you get the first, or the top green bike will be Jason Anderson. Just ahead of him is Chase Sexton, and your champion for the 2023 season is none other than Elito Mac.
Very well said, and very similar to mine even. Although my bottom 10 is a little different than yours. I have Dylan Ferrandis in 10th. I have Cooper Webb in 9th. I don't have my list because it's on my phone. I don't want to mess with my phone. I believe I have in 8th. I had
Christian Craig.
Nope.
Webb,
I had
Barsha.
Barsha wasn't 8th. 8th, I believe I have was Marvin. 7th, I had Barsha. 6th, I had, I remember I had 6 now. Well, anyways, top 5.
Roxon.
Craig.
Roxon's not in his top 10.
No, I don't know. Oh, Roxon. That was it. Roxon was 8th.
6th.
7th was Marvin. 6th was Barsha. 5th was Cooper or was Christian Craig. 4th is Malcolm Stewart. 3rd is Anderson. 2nd, I have Sexton. And for your 2023 champion, I have the 2022 Hall of Fame Rider of the Year, Eli Tomac. What do you got, Checks?
I gave up writing on the pit board. We're going through them all together, so it doesn't really matter. In 10th place, just barely sneaking in the top 10, and only if AC is not healthy, is Christian Craig. In 9th, Cooper Webb. 8th place, vintage Suzuki rider Ken Roxon. Dylan Ferrandis will be 7th. For the first time in 3 years, Barsha will not be in the top 5, but he'll slot in 6th. Marvin Muscan will be in 5th. Malcolm Stewart will be 4th, but knocking on the door of the top 3. Unfortunately, I think Jason Anderson is 3rd. The new motorcycle will have some off nights for Eli Tomac in 2nd, and I think Sexton takes the step up and is your 2023 Supercross champion.
Wow.
The first ever to win a Supercross championship on a CRF 450R. Wow.
That's incredible.
I'm blown away.
Checkers, you never even brought that up on the text. You've never even brought that up on the text thread. You kept that very well.
It's going to be a big jump, and especially after all the conversation we had. I mean, last year wasn't as good as it looked for him in Supercross, but man, he has so much speed and he's improved so much every single year of his career. And that's what tells me that I think he's going to get it done. And I think they have that bike figured out. And I think a lot of the bike problem stuff, very well, it's just a toxic environment in the truck. If one rider says the bike sucks, then they both say the bike sucks. And Kenny has a habit of everywhere he goes. I mean, when he left KTM, he's winning on the thing, and he says he hates the motorcycle and he's leaving. And we talked about he didn't like the Suzuki, and last year he didn't like the Honda. So I think that's contagious in the truck, and I think he got rid of that. I think Sexton's my pick. I think he takes a step up, and then that combined with Eli having issues and taking a little bit of a step back will open that door just enough for him. Unless the only thing that would change is if Honda's pulling a fast one on us and Jet Lawrence isn't really lining up on a 250 and he's just going to come out A1 and on a 450 and start winning.
Speaking of Jet, we didn't cover him. If he shows up on some East rounds, can Jet Lawrence win a 450 main event?
Yes.
Yes, he can.
Yeah,
Jet Lawrence came out and won his basically 450 debut, if you want to call it that, in his MXDN moto with next to no time on that bike. Absolutely, he can win.
I actually have here in my notes about Jet Lawrence, fast qualifier, heat win, or podium for sure in his very first 450 race. He'll do one of those things. I don't know if he'll do them all, but he will do one of them. He will be fast qualifier, he will win a heat, or he will be on the podium. Maybe all of them, who knows, but Jet's going to come in. He's not scared of anyone. He has a ton of talent. The one thing that'll be very, very interesting is I think everyone in that 450 class will do, it'll look like Alessi's Believe the Hype debut at Millville.
Oh, hell yeah.
Will slam him, smash him, go out of their way to rough him up, and they dang well better, because if they let him get rolling, holy crap, watch out. And I'm not even the biggest Jet hype boy, but man, the dude has talent and speed, and what he did at Designations and on that 450, and like he's the next guy, and if Chase is going to win, he better win this year, because he's going to have his hands full with his ex-teammate starting next year for sure.
Yeah, you can say it's not even hate. It's just me being like, all right, show me, kid. From the very beginning of all the hype around Jet Lawrence. And you know what he keeps doing? He keeps showing me. He keeps showing me because he has like unbelievable speed. He gets he has awesome starts. He can start from the back. He has a short memory when it comes to like he hits the ground, doesn't matter. I'm going fast again. He hasn't been injury prone. Even when he has like a scary get off, he seems to be made out of rubber. Like on it, like we're on the precipice of a very dangerous motorcycle rider, especially if, like you said, he can get some confidence racing with those guys right off the hop. That's bad news for everybody.
Yeah, speaking of being wrong, which I happen to be every once in a while, I definitely did not see him jumping on that 450 at Redbud and being able to muscle that motorcycle like Eli does and Chase does. And
didn't he win the class?
Ferrandis, and I'm pretty sure he won the 500 class. Yeah. Or not 500, but the 450 open class. Yeah. So it was impressive. And he's fun to watch. So it's kind of ironic that everything is always about Jet lately. And we wrap up our 450 review with Jet, who's a 250 rider, but it always seemed fitting because I really wanted to get your opinion on how he's going to do, because I'd see him pulling like a Wyndham, part-time, small bike guy jumps on the big bike and pulls a win.
Wyndham won one of those races in the mud.
That's right,
Charlotte.
That's what I mean. Yeah. If Kevin can do it, Jet's a very similar type rider on that big bike, very smooth, very precise, and does not worry about anybody he's racing against.
Yeah, certainly. Honestly, I think here's a question for you: if he does end up racing some opposite coast, who has more points by the end of the season in Supercross? Jet Lawrence or Justin Cooper?
Well, if Justin raced every round and Jet just rode half the rounds, they'd probably be a real similar spot.
I think so too.
25 top, I don't know. It'll be interesting, but obviously Jet's going to be a much better, big bike rider, I think, than Justin will be, but time will tell.
One more question, just to squeeze a couple more guys in here that we didn't cover. They're not on factory teams. Is Savachi and Wilson, which one of those does better? Does Wilson do anything good? I mean, he's on his way out. This is probably most likely his last Supercross season, and he's now no longer on a factory team. He's on the Firepower Honda that Roxon said was pretty sweet. I guess he was almost ready to sign there and whatnot. So bike must be pretty good.
It's better than the factory Honda,
I guess. I mean, don't get me started on that. But and then there's Savachi, which from what I've heard and gathered is that he's racing the first at least half the races with support from Rick Ware. And he's got some Pro Circuit Cowies that he's been riding, and similar bikes that he rode at World Supercross. And I think Savachi has quite a bit of talent and speed, and I think, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up on a factory Kawasaki or honestly one of the other bikes. If somebody needs a fill-in, isn't he the first guy you would call?
Oh, absolutely. I think he has top 10 speed every single weekend.
Yeah, and then
he was very impressive at the World Supercross rounds. I mean, he rode great those last three mains in Australia. He was definitely a top three speed. So I think Wilson will have a better season than Savachi if Savachi races the whole season. I still see Dean riding 8th to 12th pretty easy. That's just Dean's speed, and I think he'll ride off in the sunset and 12th in the points with a handful of top 10s and call it a career and head to World Supercross next year.
Yeah, I see Dean having a bunch of really quiet nights of 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and you just don't really hear much about him, but he's there.
Yeah.
I'm a little quieter on Dean than that. I think it's more 10 to 12. I think anything more than 10 would be a really, really good night for him. But I think you see more flashes of brilliance from Savachi. I'm not ready to give up on Savatgy yet. And I mean, he's racing for his career right now. I mean, I know at one point there, he said straight up that he wasn't going to go ride for Hep because he didn't want to ride the bike. And he feels confident in this Cowie that he has and leaving himself available. So I think he knows he has to do something if he wants to keep racing his dirt bike. He's finally healthy for once. I just don't know like how far up into the top 10 can he really get. I mean, the field's pretty dang deep and talented. I mean, but I could see him getting some 6th and 7ths, here and there. I don't think he consistently does it because of being on a privateer program. You don't have all that support around you. And a lot of times that just breeds inconsistency more than anything. And then do we know is the McElrath to Hep thing happening? Did that get done or is that not happening? Is he riding Yamahas alongside Bloss? Because I'd heard that as well.
I could see that happening. I actually could see Wilson battling with Bloss like every single weekend. I will text McElrath right now and see if he can get back to us. He actually is. Well, he's usually up playing video games around now. He is.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, but I certainly think that McElrath had, like, if you want to talk about the three of those guys, I think McElrath has the most raw talent on a Supercross track than all three of those guys. What I think Joey has going for him is the fact that he still needs to prove himself. He still wants to continue his career, whereas it's kind of a farewell tour, like right off into the sunset for Dean, who's proven pretty much everything he's going to prove in the sport. And like the only thing that Joey might have against him is just being tired from carrying around that chip on his shoulder that he's had for the last 4 or 5 years. But yeah, I think he's going to be someone who's going to be a thorn in the side of a lot of factory back guys, and probably a source of some frustration from some guys who are getting factory contracts, who at the end of the night, they're looking at results and be like, I got beat by Savatgy.
I see, as we've all seen on Twitter, he seems to be working on wash on his own bike. So I don't know how involved Rick Ware is. I mean, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of expended energy, a lot of time. Yeah. So if he better carry that ship into 2023, because if he's working on his own bikes while practicing, that's a lot of time, a lot of wasted energy.
And
fair enough.
I think people forget pretty quickly that his rookie year on a Cowie 450 was pretty darn good, and he keeps that Cowie spot. And he's still on a factory Cowie if it's not for AC. So I just, AC moving into the class and really kind of being guaranteed a spot, and clearly he has some blackmail on Cowie because he has a 2-year deal.
He's got naked pictures of somebody over there.
I mean, Savatgy was winning heat races, I believe. I mean, I know he was in the mix. Like, he was really good. And so to put him in a category with McElrath, I don't think it's fair, because Shane hasn't done anything on a 450 in Supercross.
No.
At all. I mean, it's been an absolute disaster.
His 450 career has been a disaster. He's been on literally 9 manufacturers. There isn't 9 manufacturers, but he's ridden all of them.
And
he got a 7 with that Detroit when obviously everybody else grenaded. That was his best finish last year, and that was his last race. I don't know if he did not race after Detroit, but he was a 7th, but that was definitely due to attrition.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, there's no good results on a 450 from him. It's been an absolute mess too. I think he has a lot of talent. Yes.
He was with a back injury last year, wasn't he?
He's been dealing with a back injury for a couple of years, kind of off and on.
The back was even something he talked about when he was on TLD.
Before his title, even before his 250 Supercross title. It was nice to see him come out and get some good results and win at the World Supercross thing in the 250 class. And I've seen Shane ride a 450 as an amateur. That's when he put himself on the map, is he ran the fastest lap time of the week over Cooper Webb on a 450 at Loretta Lynn's. He can ride a 450. It's just, he hasn't been able to put it together, and a lot of it's injuries and whatnot. But his resume is not nearly as good as Savatgy's is to this point. And if he's coming in on either a Suzuki or a privateer Yamaha, because I had heard that Rick Ware was going to kind of support him alongside Bloss on the Rock River deal that he's on. That's what I'd heard was kind of happening.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't, like, neither of those sound like they're that solid of a program.
Do we know if Rick Ware knows who Jerry Savatgy or Shane McElrath are?
I bet you he knows McElrath because he won him a title.
Okay.
World
Yeah, you might.
title.
You might.
They
Yeah,
were
you
on
might be
top
able to pick
the
him out of a
world
lineup.
together.
Yes.
Like grueling championship run.
They do not
6
know
races.
They do not know how to put decent graphics on their motorcycles. I will tell you that.
No, they look like Canadian junior riders with those red numbers.
Yes,
that's the red plates that I run. Like is those red numbers. Checkers, I'm sure you see some Canadian kids come down every once in a while. Like, what's with the red numbers? That's our B class. Yeah. But no, time will tell on a lot of these guys. I think like the Ken Roxon thing. I think I'm sure we'll find out what Hep's doing as far as Joey Sabat or Shane McElrath like the Wednesday before Anaheim 1, which is more than enough time to set up a motorcycle. But Checkers, I got one last segment that I wanted to do with you guys, and you guys can like basically tell me to buzz off if you're tired of talking to me or whatever. But I wanted you to give the listeners, if they're still listening to this point in the podcast, although we're going to break this up into a bunch of different segments. So the floor is yours to talk a little bit about race tech and not only the awesome suspension offerings that you guys have, but also the engine stuff you guys do.
Yeah, so my actual job, and even though I'm moonlighting as a media guy with you now, which is pretty sweet, is I'm the director of marketing for Race Tech. We are the world's largest aftermarket motorcycle suspension modification company, famous for our gold valves, which is the revalve in a box. We sponsor pretty much every dang privateer out there, and at some point in our history, we've pretty much worked with every guy from Jeremy McGrath to Cooper Webb. Like they've all went through the Race Tech program at some point, which is pretty neat.
Denny Stephenson probably.
I would assume so at some point. I don't know. There was a 2-stroke 250 that should have had some Race Tech stuff on it.
Should have had it. I'd probably still be right if it wasn't for that. But it wasn't for my laziness.
Right. And but our goal right now and our focus right now has been working with all the fastest privateers, and instead of writing a check to work with the factory team, we've chosen to go that route because the fact of the matter is the privateer is closer to speed than what you're going to get with a local guy. And instead of focusing on, we're going to be amazing on Honda, instead we have guys on every single brand and every single bike to get feedback from. And so it helps us with development and to push that side. Plus for me, it's honestly a lot of fun when you take a guy that's barely making night shows and help them make their first main event, or you even enjoy helping a guy make his first night show in Supercross. It's dang rewarding. And, you get that really close relationship because they don't have a huge team of guys around them, and you're able to really help them. It's on a factory team. It's like, there's a lot of guys helping them. There's a lot of resources dedicated to them. So we've chosen to go a little bit different route as far as building our brand on the suspension side. And then on the engine side, I can't believe we've been doing it for like 8 years now. And we have a very experienced staff and some of the best equipment in the industry. And you would be amazed at this point, the level of guys and companies that are using our engine services that put their logo on it, and you never know it was at our shop. Unfortunately, I can't actually mention a lot of their names because we have NDAs and such in there, but everything from OEMs to some guys that build stuff that stands on the podium in a Supercross, we'll just put it that way, goes through our shop at this point. So it's really, really cool to be part of that. And I mean, the basis there is we give good head. And what that we give you a good head so that is reliable and makes very good competitive power. And it's all because it's developed on math and science, first of all, and then goes track tested. But we don't there's no such thing as building time bombs in these 5-hour engines that are $10,000 and going to blow up on you. Like that's not what we're doing. That's not the business that we're in. So we support a lot of engine builders with offering their machining services, and then they assemble the engine, and we'll give them a recommendation of what we've found works best parts wise. And we tune ECUs and all that side of things, but it's up to them at the end of the day to choose the parts that go in the bike and the way that they want it to be. But we can give them our recommendations. So we do the R&D and we do the machining, and then we have somebody else that's assembling them. We've had some great luck with, There was a time when Jerry Robin was whole shotting nationals as a privateer on an engine that cost under $1,000 retail. So it's
that's pretty cool.
It's pretty neat. We can make a lot of power with a lot of reliability that can be competitive. I'm not saying it's a star Yamaha, but I would say that solitary Yamahas are pretty fast. The
I was about
AJE
to say, you
bikes,
guys are working with those guys.
and the AJE bikes are pretty good. And we work with, like I said, a lot of privateers, and then a lot of the stuff that, like I said, I can't talk about. That's at the front quite a bit. It's really neat how quickly that department has grown, and it's a lot of fun for me to be involved on different sides of things.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you giving us some info on that. I think if Debo ever gets back into riding, he's going to have to do so with some race tech in his bike. Okay, last thing I have for you guys. You can guys, like I said, you can get me to buzz off or not, but I wanted to do a segment called Overrated, Underrated, or Properly Rated. I got 2 for each one of you guys. And I was hoping that you guys could each have 1 for me. Checkers, I'll start with you, if that's okay. You guys down for this?
Absolutely.
I'm in.
Perfect.
And I have one for you.
All right. So Checkers, overrated, underrated, or properly rated qualifying times?
Qualifying times are overly rated. There's a lot of guys that are not good qualifiers, but they're good racers. You hear it all the time. I mean, Webb was a good example of don't worry about his times if they're off. There are a few guys that if they're on with qualifying times, but I mean, you have the Jerry Robbins of the world that they're going to qualify fast no matter what, and they might not even make the main event. So qualifying times, overrated. Don't get all worried about them. They don't mean that much.
All right, Debo, you're up next. Opening ceremonies, overrated, underrated, or properly rated?
I think they're properly rated. I've been to a handful of Supercrosses each season. I love the way that things open up. I think everything's great. It gets everybody fired up. Each rider kind of comes out, introduces themselves, the lasers, the fire. It's a show. It's a production. It's not always about just the racing. It's an entertainment piece. And I think Phil does an outstanding job. The riders, I think, get a chance to show themselves and come out with a little bit of music. We miss Kevin Windham doing his transfer back in the day. But I think they do a great job. And as a rider, when, just the way, not necessarily opening ceremonies, but just, if you're the very first heat of the night and the announcers scream and the gate drops, and it's just, man, as a rider, you're pumped. And as a fan, you just can't wait to see more of it. So I hope Feld continues to keep doing it, because it's a show.
When did they start doing it? Did they do opening ceremonies when you were racing 250 Supercross?
No, but it was more just before the main event, the yelling, the screaming, just getting everybody fired up, and you're on the
Lurch.
gate, you're feeling it. Yeah. Necessarily wasn't Lurch. I don't remember who it was, but I'm not really, I think I remember in 2009 when I worked with Josh Grant and Trey Kennard, and I remember Josh was doing real well, and they wanted to know what music he wanted to come out to. And then that's when they were kind of doing the scripted sequences that, little, 2-minute shows that they put on the screen before, like 30 seconds, wherever the hell they were, that they kind of custom done and stuff. So, and they were doing them back then. That was down there 15 years ago. So, Feld knows how to make a show. They're good. They're good at what they do.
All right, perfect. Checks, you got one for me?
Yes. Big whoops.
Big whoops are underrated. Big whoops are big time underrated. Big whoops, they separate guys. They show off so much about what a rider is all about as far as his confidence, bike setup, and the ability for certain guys to like really be a separator. I love big whoops. Big whoops are an underrated feature. And honestly, they're my favorite thing about arena cross. When you get a really big set of arena cross whoops, that was one of the things that looking back, when I think of guys like Denny and Buddy back in the day, who could get on top of those things and run away from people, big whoops are underrated.
I like big whoops, and I cannot lie.
Fair enough.
It makes for a great show when they're big monstrous ones. I almost yell at the TV, and I usually post something dumb on social media. Don't take down the whoops. Stop rolling them. I 100% agree.
I remember there
of hours being developed to get your motorcycle to work through a set of whoops, and they have a big set, and all of a sudden the dozer comes out to roll them. It might be a guy that works for a suspension company's worst nightmare. Like,
yeah,
seriously,
frustrates me to no end, because that's always been our privateer guys' advantage, was they can get through a set of whoops, and it would separate them from the guys that couldn't. So I guess we're all in agreement on something. That's pretty sweet.
No kidding. Okay, we'll go back to Debo and then we'll finish off with checkers. Debo, overrated, underrated, or properly rated rest before a race? I'm willing to bet you've done some races on a few hours of sleep.
No, I've made this pretty clear, and I've had my good times over the years during the season, but they were always on a Saturday night after the race. I never felt I had the talent to pull a dogger or to pull an all-nighter before a race, and I think good rest is pretty key. Although, Jason Thomas recently talked about going to Europe and how important it was for him, had a habit that after practice, he'd go back to the hotel and then try and lay down for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour before he had to come back to the stadium. I remember we would just go eat somewhere and kind of enjoy the city because we're outside the country. So in America, though, when that's your focus every weekend, I think getting well rested is pretty key. So I'd say it's pretty well properly rated. I think it's good. And I think today's riders, the way they beat themselves up if they eat a donut, I'm sure they're getting good sleep. Alden probably has been oxygen tanks to get a good 20 hours of sleep every day.
Yeah, no kidding. They sleep 25 hours a day. They're like cats. I would agree with you. I think it's properly rated. I think it's important, but obviously to certain guys, like if you don't need that extra sleep, that's up to you, I suppose. But I think more sleep is always and being rested rolling in is always going to be to your advantage. What do you think, Jex?
Well, it's certainly not a disadvantage. I've had some great races on very little sleep, and not even necessarily because of being out the night before or anything along those lines. Sometimes on that side, but when I was actually decent at riding dirt bikes, I was a junior in high school, so my going out was a little different. But I think on the level that they're on now, you have to be rested and ready. It's important, and I think people are paying attention to it a lot more. And I think that's one of the things when you start talking about privateers and that sort of things that they don't get. They're driving across the country and they don't have a program, and they're doing their own bike work and stuff or organizing it. And they're not on ever a good schedule or routine at the race. And a lot of times they're unloading and loading their van, to do tech and that side of things. And then they have to go grab, I haven't gone to the grocery store yet and I need waters and bananas and stuff for tomorrow. And it gets, 10, 11 o'clock or whatever the night before the race. And they're still running around. I think all of that stuff does definitely start to add up and hurt their programs. So you see guys when they start flying into the races, a lot of times it helps if they're privateer on that level or having some structure and some support. And I think a lot of that it comes down to rest.
Certainly, when you have guys who are essentially riding, they're racing against guys who don't have to worry about any of those things, including driving the vehicle. You got guys say your Alex Nagy's or your Josh Greco's of the world. And by no means are those guys world beaters and they're going for championships. But the reality is they're riding the same track as a guy like Eli Tomac, and they're driving the series. They're contacting sponsors. They're getting they're putting graphics on the night before races. Sometimes it's absolutely ridiculous what some guys are able to pull off.
Yeah, our friend Cody Gilmore, he was a privateer for a long time. He was flying in on a Thursday and getting his bike out of the privateer rig and working on it all day Thursday or Friday, getting it ready, and then having to tech it himself. And it's incredible what those guys do, and they've earned it. They earn their place on the gate every weekend, and it's very, very well respected. And they don't get enough praise because they are some badass individuals.
All right, last one for us. We got checkers here. Overrated, underrated, or properly rated the 2004 Storm Lake Arena Cross team.
Well, we were definitely overrated by all of the people at the nightclubs that we went to. And when every week the DJ shouted, Storm Lake Honda Arena Cross team's in the house and they're in the VIP and all this stuff, they had them convinced that we were rock stars and celebrities. And And let's be real, we weren't even getting on the podium or anything like that. And it was the regional arena cross series. It wasn't even the real one. So we were definitely overrated in their minds. But yeah, we'll go with overrated for sure. I don't even have there's no but to it.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize that was going on.
Oh, it was pretty.
Well, I've heard the story since. I just didn't realize that was happening at the time.
It sounds like some good times were had.
Again, I was a junior in high school, so I was getting my proper rest on Friday nights in the hotel room, but all the other two riders and all the mechanics, they were wide open the whole time, from the time that box van left till it came back. And a lot of times they get such good VIP status going on, Thursday we get into town and Friday night. By Saturday night when the race was over, they had them convinced that a little 17-year-old me was going to the bar with them. We're going partying. So and I get one cool good night in there and learn a lot about life.
Like it. Well, that's certainly where a lot of things can be learned. Boys, this has been so much fun. We've been on the line for like damn near 3 hours, breaking down one of the most competitive series is in motorcycle racing, period, let alone motocross. I'm excited for it, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to break down the 450 class with me.
No, thank you. Obviously when I mentioned to Checkers, he was ecstatic. I was pumped. We do this over text, texting for every day through the week. So for us to get together with you and I have talked a lot, and to break it down like this for the sport we love, I can't wait. I'm doing the countdown each day with old images and old riders with old numbers, and I'm excited to sell. So it is one of the greatest things. And the greatest thing about Anaheim 1 is the fact that there'll be 22 riders lined up on the gate in both classes, and every single one of those riders still think they can believe that they can win until they have yet to race. They've trained their asses off. They all think they got the best bike, and there's no greater feeling than the very first round, because you'll never have all 22 riders thinking they can win the race, because by the time they hit around 2 or 3, they all know they're about 8th, 9th, and 10th.
Yeah, the pecking order definitely starts to get established by then. They're all tied up in points at Anaheim 1. I always find it funny that we put so much pressure on Anaheim 1, and then as soon as the race is over, all of the results are like, but it's Anaheim 1. You get all kinds of weird results from Anaheim. You can't really, you can't take much away.
You totally blow it off. Yeah, you make excuses for it because it's Anaheim 1. Exactly.
It's the most important, not important race of the year.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
it's
I'll be there.
Exciting though. I'm looking at our list, and I will be on my couch. I'm coming out later for a couple of the other rounds, but it's pretty exciting. I'm looking at my list, and there's 18 guys on there that legitimately expect that they should be able to be in the top 10 or right by it. And I would say that there's 15 of them that expect to be in the top 10 at least, which is awesome for us. And then that means that there's 4 spots left for about 10 privateers that are main event caliber each week that they're going to be fighting over it. So give me some LCQ action all day long.
Bring on the last chance qualifiers.
Twice on Saturday, and then give me all the 250 LCQs in the world, especially because nothing better than some overhyped, inexperienced kids just absolutely sending it, trying to make the main event. This has been a ton of fun, but that's going to be even more fun.
Absolutely. No, I can't wait for that. The 3 of us are going to reconvene for the 250s, but like Debo said, you need to get some rest, and we're going to go to do exactly that to wrap, like, before we get back together to do the 250s. For Chris Riesenberg and Denny Stephenson, I'm Brad Gebhardt. Thank you so much for listening to the BigMx Radio podcast. If you watched it on YouTube, thanks for watching. And we'll cut it off right there, boys.